Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto teleported in Resident Evil by Madara and Harem? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Super Neos too for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Naruto stirred as consciousness slowly worked its way back to them, his head pounding like a drum with the pain coursing through him. He laid spread eagle on a plain of grass, the sky darkening as night slowly drew closer. He blinked confusingly. Last he remembered it was becoming daytime, not night. He stood from his spread eagle position, glancing around the general area around him, when he realized that there shouldn't be trees around. Killer Bee destroyed them all when they were battling against the Jinchuriki and Obito. Questions popping into his head as he glanced around, he suddenly realized what he was doing as he walked. Instead of walking straight like usual, he was climbing out of something. Jumping out, he saw that there was a small crater in the ground. Startled, he looked around for any sign of his friends to explain what happened. He saw nothing, confusing him all the more. Where was everyone? Why was there a crater in the ground? Why were the trees back? He had so many questions and so little places to look for answers. He collapsed to a knee when the pain circulated again. Why was he in so much pain? Last thing he remembered doing was working with Sasuke to fight Madara, and then nothing. His mind drew a blank for the period of time from their fight to his arrival here. Sensing around him, he found nothing. No signs of Sasuke, Madara, or anyone. That was both good and bad. Good he couldn't sense Madara, but bad that he couldn't sense any of his friends. Grabbing his stomach, he felt the pain travel all around. He must have taken a really hard fall to be in this much pain. His clothes weren't that great in shape either. His orange jacket was all but destroyed, only a strap around his right shoulder remained. His pants were okay. Holes in them, but otherwise alright. That fight with Madara must have been worse than he thought. Did he win? Did he defeat him, or did he lose and he was in the Moon's Eye plan right now? Naruto was worried. He needed answers right now or he was gonna lose his damn mind. Someone? He called, hoping for an answer in return. He got nothing. Looking down to his stomach, he tried for the fox who took residence in him 17 years ago. Kurama, you there? Naruto? He called back, Naruto happy to have heard from someone that he knew and not just the dead world around him. We got a problem. Naruto rolled his eyes. You're telling me? He shrugged off the remains of his tattered jacket. Kurama, I don't know what the hell is going on here. The trees are back. I feel pain everywhere. I can't sense anyone, and on top of it all, I woke up in a crater. Naruto took off his headband to take a look at it. It had ash smeared all over the Konoha symbol. He wiped it clean, a small sense of comfort coming from seeing the familiar symbol. You're in another dimension. Kurama's statement caused Naruto's eyes to widen and his mouth to fall to the ground he was standing on. What? He echoed so loud it caused the birds in the trees to crow and start flying somewhere else. What the hell do you mean? Am I in that nutjob's Moon's Eye plan? Because if I am, I'm gonna spaz the hell out. Naruto howled. He lowered his tone. All my friends. They're alive. Naruto sighed in goodwill. Thank God for that. At least they were when we left. Naruto lost his goodwill to start freaking out again. What the hell do you mean before we left? He bellowed again, whatever birds that remained in the trees taking off again after hearing the terrifying voice again. Kurama, stop ing me around and give it to me straight. Naruto howled to the beast that lived within him. He waited for the fox to give him the cold and rough tone that came most times he talked to him. He didn't disappoint. You want it straight? Fine. You were fighting that slime ball Madara with your Uchiha friend. You combined your Rasen Shuriken with his Amaterasu to penetrate his Susanoo blade. The explosion was so strong that it tore through the fabric of time and space. Naruto was shocked, but also prideful that he was able to rip a hole in space and time itself. That was badass status. Your Uchiha friend was about to get sucked inside, but you, being your oh so courageous self, used a chakra arm to yank him out of the way. Too bad the pull sucked you in and started hurling you around dimensions before stopping and spitting you out here. You would have died had I not covered you with loads of my chakra to lessen the impact of the fall. Naruto could hear the snort the fox gave. I used so much that I need to sleep for months to get it all back, possibly years. I never had to do that before, so my body needs time to recover. Naruto could hear the fox sigh, like if he was about to bring more bad news. Madara was alive when we were sucked, and without you there to fight, he most likely will kill everyone there with a Beto. Your friends are strong, but you were the only one who could have stopped them. I'm sorry, but our world will be in ruins soon, if it isn't already. Naruto was saddened. His friends were left to fend for themselves against two crazies, and his only companion in this new dimension was gonna be forced to take a hibernation in order to get his strength back, which in turn would give Naruto some strength back. That explained his healing not working like it always did. He was gonna be alone in a strange place by himself for months, possibly years. At least with Kurama, the time wouldn't be too bad to live through, since he would have someone to talk to. He was alone. It sunk in deeper. Alone, just like when he was younger. All that hard work he put in, and all the goals he had, gone like the wind. Naruto turned his head when he heard the bushes rattle. He watched carefully as the leaves fell off the bushes as whatever was behind it inched closer to him from the shield of the bush. He could hear barking, a small part of him hoping that it turned out to be Kiba or Akamaru to find him. His hopes died when a group of dogs, bloody hounds, jumped through the bushes and snarled at him with a crazed look in their eyes. Naruto took note of the skin falling in ships from the group of 4 hounds. It was creepy. Naruto recognized the look in the eyes. It was the daring look. The dogs were waiting for him to make a move, and if it was a bad one, they were coming after him. Naruto inched backwards slowly, making sure that he didn't do anything to arouse suspicion. He was doing good as the dogs weren't attacking him yet, only growling. Naruto was so busy looking at them that he missed the twig behind him. Once his foot pressed on it, and it snapped, the dogs jumped at him, causing him to turn and run. Before he turned, he saw one of the dogs fall into the crater he arrived in, so he mentally laughed. He didn't think about jumping through the trees since his body ached from the fall too much, and he couldn't risk getting hurt when his healing was gone. He called for Kurama, but got nothing, the fox most likely in his month or year hibernation. The sense of loneliness he buried so long ago surfaced as he got chased by the hounds through the forest. He hated this feeling and hoped and prayed after making friends that he would never have to feel that way ever again. It was his biggest fear to end up back in the same place he was as a kid, with no friends or family to fall back on for love and support. Running through the forest with homicidal animals after him, it all came crashing down like a brick wall. He was alone. He was alone in a new dark world with no hope of getting back. The only possible way would be to make another hole to get back to his world, but he couldn't do it on his end with his weakened strength, and he highly doubt Madara would cooperate with Sasuke to make another one. No. He was alone here with death literally chomping at his heels. Seeing a house, he dashed for it and jumped through the front door once he made it close enough. Shutting the door, he surveyed around the house that he entered. It was big, bigger than the Hokage building for sure. A stairwell led into the middle of the room, 2 openings to the left and right to the back, while the staircase in the middle led to a door at the end and 2 smaller staircases to the upper level floor. 2 double doors were on the ground floor and another single door to the right. Naruto took the decoration in greatly, finding admiration for it despite the hounds outside. Speaking of the front door, it burst open, Naruto taking a defensive stance to try and fight them off despite his strength withdrawal. To his surprise, it was 4 people, 3 men and a woman. 2 of the men pointed a weapon at him for a second before lowering them. They all wore a vest, 1 red, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 green with the word SDRS imprinted on the back. They each wore a holster with knives around them. 1 man had black hair, another had blonde gelly back with sunglasses, the woman had brown hair under her blue hat, and the man wearing the red vest had brown hair pushed back. All Naruto could mutter when the man in shades addressed him was, "Holy shit." Naruto's eyes were widened as he stared at the faces of the 4 people that had barged into the door just a few moments after him. He felt the confusion and slight tension between them as they all stared at him wide-eyed as well. Well, most of them anyway. He couldn't tell if the man in the shades was staring at him the same way. The man with the green vest lowered his weapon as he took a step closer to him, Naruto jumping back and taking a defensive stance. After those dogs, Naruto wasn't sure if these people were gonna attack him the same way. He felt his weapon pouch jiggle when he took the step back, making a mental note that he still had his weapons ready at his disposal. Easy, the man held his hands up to try and show that he meant no harm. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man. We're not gonna hurt you. We're the STARS Alpha team. Naruto now had the confused look going, completely filling the room with a sense of confusion that seemed to dismiss the barking of the crazy hounds outside. The what of the what? Naruto asked, lowering his stance to what appeared to the public as relaxed. He was still on guard, leaning slightly over to the left, the side where his weapon pouch was in case he needed to make a quick grab for something. He felt a chill, and he wasn't talking about the cool air. The man in the red vest raised an eyebrow. The police force of the city. We're the top squad for the RPD. Naruto still didn't understand what was going on, but he felt slightly better now hearing these guys were police. They must be this world's ANBU. The lone woman of the group spoke now. We were sent up here to investigate those murders that have been happening, she said, causing Naruto's eyes to slightly widen at the mention of murders going around. What kind of sick place did Madara spit him into? The man with the shades holstered his weapon as he took his step forward. Naruto couldn't see it behind the man's shades, but he was sure he was observing him. Why are you in the area? He asked. Got chased by some crazy bastard dogs, Naruto said, remembering the crazed look in their eyes that rivaled Sasuke's that day that they were in the Valley of the End. Just remembering his friend now made his chest swell and tighten, knowing that he would never see him or his other friends ever again. He quickly did his best to shrug it off and bury it, knowing he had to stay on his toes with little distraction if he wanted to make it out of here alive. They all looked shocked at his explanation, Naruto guessing they ran into the same problem since he can very easily still hear the dogs barking outside and scratching on the door trying to get in. He also wasn't that far behind them, only being in this house for a few seconds before they came in. The man in the shades continued. I was sure it was said that this place was off limits until the investigation was solved. Never heard that, Naruto said. He wasn't sure what else to say to them. He obviously couldn't tell them the real story of how he got here. They would deem him nuts and probably leave him up here alone with those wild animals still lurking about. If he didn't have his power restricted, he wouldn't care, but he was in a strange place all alone for years until Kurama woke up. He would probably die before making it out of here if he stayed alone. So, he made a decision right then and there. Get on the good side of these police soldiers so they can help him out of these death mountains. I'm not from around here, he started. It wasn't a lie per se. He really wasn't from around these parts. I travel from place to place, just letting my feet take me wherever they want to go. All alone? The man in green asked. Naruto nodded. How old are you? 17, he answered. A year too young to be on your own, the woman said. Naruto shrugged. I'm gonna be 18 tomorrow, he said, quickly seeing that 18 was an important age in this world. He thought it'd be best to quickly put down any problems with his age by revealing he was about to turn 18 within a few hours, or at least he was in his world. Well, that solves that, the man in shades addressed. Why aren't you with your parents? The man in red asked. Both died when I was young, he answered, getting slightly teary-eyed as he remembered his dead parents. Even after meeting them both and getting to know them, it still hurt to speak the truth that they were dead. I'm sorry, she looked regretful for bringing that up. It's fine, he eased after seeing how bad she felt for mentioning that. He could see they were good people. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, by the way, he introduced to lower the uneasy tension that had built back up in the room. The woman gave him a kind smile. I'm Jill. Jill Valentine. Chris Redfield. The man in the green vest greeted. Barry Burton. The man in the red vest gave a small wave of the hand. Albert Weskier. The man with the shades gave a simple monotone introduction as he turned his head towards the door that they all entered from. Now that introductions are out of the way, we need to find a new route out of here. Going back the way we came isn't exactly the safest way with those mutts outside. Chris nodded. I agree. But first we need to find Bravo Team. Bam! The group of 5 turned to the direction they heard the loud noise. Naruto could hear the diminishing echo of the noise coming from the direction of the set of double doors to the left side of the room. What was that? Jill asked as she stared wide-eyed at the direction they all heard the gunshot noise. Sounded like a gunshot, Barry noted. I'll go check it out, Chris said as he took the hard first step forward, letting any fear he might have had be pushed off to the side to do what needed to be done. I'll tag along, Naruto offered. At the familiar look of objection that started to appear on Jill's face, he said, I'm a trained fighter. I was the strongest person in my village. He might have also been the strongest person in his world, but he didn't get a chance to finish his big fight against Madara to find out for sure. Plus, if a gun went off, there might be something dangerous out there. Chris shouldn't go alone. Weskier gave a weird half-smirk at the smart idea Naruto displayed. True. Alright, the rest of us will stay here and secure this area and wait for you guys to come back. Jill and Barry nodded in agreement with their captain. As Chris and Naruto started heading to the door, they heard Jill speak up. Chris, the point man for the Alpha team, turned his head back towards Jill. Be careful. Chris gave a small smile. Always, he promised. Naruto nodded. I'll keep him safe. He promised to Jill as he and Chris turned back towards the set of double doors and started to take the last steps needed to reach them. Chris and Naruto each pushed one door open, stepping inside the new room and letting the doors shut behind them, a loud echo booming as the doors slammed closed. They entered a large dining room. A table that took up nearly the entire center of the room stood in front of them, a fireplace on the opposite side of the room with flames burning the logs, an emblem mounted on the wall above it. Paintings littered the walls with the sound of the clock by the right walls ticking echoing in the quiet and creepy room, only accommodated by the faint sound of lightning outside. Chris looked up and could see a walkway from the second floor just above him and Naruto. The blonde ninja took in the room with shock. This room is bigger than my apartment, he gasped. How many people live here that they need a table this big? He asked the quiet and observing SDRS member. How should I know? He asked with a shrug of the shoulders. Naruto gave a small annoyed glance to Chris for his wise-ass comment before he spied another door at the end of the room next to the fireplace. He pointed it out to the SDRS member. There's a door over there. Chris followed the direction of Naruto's finger, and indeed saw the door that he was talking about. Good eye, he praised, causing Naruto to get a grin plastered onto his face. Let's see what's behind it, he said as the two walked through the large dining room over to their destination. So Chris? Naruto attempted to start a conversation with the man to relieve some of the boredom that he felt surfacing now that his adrenaline rush was gone from his chase with the crazy dogs. The point man turned to him with a raised eyebrow. What exactly are you and your partners doing up here? Chris sighed heavily, like if he was about to tell some bad news or dark revelation that was probably better unsaid. Naruto could handle it. He can handle anything bad or disturbing after his dark and mostly depressing 17 years of life. There's been some grisly murders up here in the mountains, he started, looking to be forcing himself to stay focused and not lose his dinner over it. He holstered his handgun before he started twirling his combat knife with the logo of his team SDRS imprinted on the side. We received reports of the victims being eaten and torn apart. Naruto felt his eyes widen and his stomach lunge at the news. Chris gave a small humorless laugh. I guess we know now what caused them, but it cost us our friend Joseph. I'm sorry to hear that. Naruto gave Chris a nod of condolence. I lost a friend of mine not too long ago as well. Naruto remembered holding Niji as he died not even a few hours ago back in his world. However long that was now that he was in a new dimension, he didn't know. But to him, now that he thought about it, it felt like it just happened, still fresh in his mind and heart. I'm sorry about that. Chris gave him his own nod of condolence as they made it to the door Naruto pointed out earlier. Chris grabbed the knob and slowly opened the door, Naruto falling into an old formation that Kakashi taught him, Sasuke, and Sakura back as Genin. When a comrade opens a door, another steps in and surveys around to make sure it's safe. Not seeing anything abnormal, Naruto gave a nod to Chris to let the SDRS member know it was safe to come in. Chris carefully closed the door behind him and held his handgun high after placing his knife back into the holder on his chest. The sounds of teeth chewing and sloppy slurping got the two's attention. Glancing down the dark hallway, Chris couldn't see anything left the way they came in, but Naruto saw something on the right. A pair of feet stuck out around the corner. "Hey Chris," Naruto whispered, getting the man's attention. "Look," he pointed out the feet that were sticking around the corner. The ankles were moving, showing that the person was conscious and looking at something on the floor. Chris took lead as he and Naruto walked around the corner to get a better look at the body the feet were connected to. They saw the worn-out shoes of the man as he bent over a body. The man had his hands over the body as the sounds of the chewing they heard seemed to be coming from this guy in front of them. Before Naruto could say anything, the head of the second body fell back, Chris gasping and staring wide-eyed at the new face. "Kenneth!" His gasp caught the attention of the man, for lack of a better term, eating Kenneth. His pale head turned and the sight of his pale white eyes that appeared to be dead got Chris and Naruto to back away as he snarled at them. The cannibal lunged for them as he stood on his feet. Naruto acted quickly, pulling a kunai from his pouch as he went to stab the crazy nut in the head. Chris was quicker and fired a bullet from his handgun, dispatching the monster with a quick shot to the head. Chris hovered over the corpse of what used to be Kenneth. "Damn," he whispered as he grabbed the fallen weapon and 2 clips of ammo that were next to his half-eaten corpse. "I'm sorry, Chris," Naruto apologized, feeling awful about Chris losing not just 1, but 2 friends in a single night. "What's going on here?" he whispered as he shook his head. He paused for a few seconds as he looked to Kenneth and back to the gun, seemingly thinking about doing something. He held the spare handgun to Naruto, the blonde looking to him for an answer. "If there are more of these things, you need to be able to protect yourself without getting too close." He didn't need to gesture to the remains of Kenneth. Naruto got what he was saying. The ninja took the gun and a spare clip of ammo from Chris. "What do we do? Go back to Jill and the others?" he asked. This was all really up. There were not only dogs, but monsters too that were hungry for human flesh. This place was freaking sick and terrifying. Chris nodded. "Gotta warn them about what we just saw." He spared his fallen comrade one last look before he and Naruto turned and walked out of the dark hallway that was Kenneth's resting place and back to Jill, Barry, and Wesker. Wesker? Jill? Chris and Naruto made it back to the main hall that they met up in, coming back to find an empty room with no sign of the other SDRS members. Chris was looking around for any signs of his partners while Naruto stayed off to the side, thinking about what he and Chris just saw. What the hell was wrong with that guy that he ate Kenneth? What can provoke a human to start eating the flesh of another? Naruto had no clue what was going on in this place. He's been in this world for under an hour, and already been chased by dogs and seen someone getting eaten by another person. He was starting to think that he was just dead, and in hell right now. "Well," Chris called out to the ninja. Naruto turned to see him holding a piece of paper in his hands. Jill and Barry went one way and Wesker went another after hearing something. He sighed as he folded the paper into fourths and pocketed it. "Looks like it's just us, my friend. What do we do?" Naruto asked. "There's obviously something going on here. What with the crazy dogs and the cannibal act that we just saw." He turned to the door that led back to the dining room. "We'll go poke around and see what we can find and hopefully meet up with someone." Naruto gestured to the direction back to Kenneth's corpse. "Lead the way." "Jesus," Naruto muttered as he and Chris stumbled into another dead body. They went back to where Kenneth's corpse was and went into the door that was beside it after seeing that all the other ones were locked. Chris found a clip of ammo in a bird cage while Naruto found the body that they were currently staring at. It leaned against the wall in front of the stairwell with the head being bludgeoned in with something of great force. The chest was ripped open and the intensities were sticking out slightly. "What the hell is going on here?" he asked the older man who was holding his head as he stared in shock at the body. "What the hell happened in this mansion? It looks like it was a quick death," Chris noted after a second of examination. He sighed. "Poor guy. Let's keep moving." Naruto placed a hand on his shoulder to get the man moving again. Naruto was afraid that if they stuck in one spot for too long that they were gonna end up like this guy. They climbed the staircase at a slow pace. "You think Jill and the others are all right?" Chris ran a hand down his face, inhaling and exhaling deeply as he thought about what he wanted to say. "Normally I would say yes, but after what we saw with Kenneth I just don't know right now." He stopped at the top of the stairs. "I just hope we run into them before something happens." Naruto nodded, giving the man a small smile of confidence. We're gonna find them. We'll do whatever we have to do. Naruto tried to gather nature energy for Sage Mode when they were looking at that dead body at the bottom of the stairs, but his chakra system was all wonkers right now due to the still very recent shutdown of Kurama. His chakra was going up ridiculously slow. His healing was still not working right, and he only had enough chakra for a few clones and maybe one Rasen Shuriken. He couldn't risk trying Sage Mode, messing up, and turning into a frog statue. He had to rely on normal tracking skills to find Jill, Barry, and Weskier. Chris opened the next door, bringing him and Naruto to a new room that was lit with dim light bulbs. There was a door directly in front of them and another corpse by the door, but there was also another way they could go. Naruto was tempted to use shadow clones, but the rational part of his mind told him to save it for real emergencies. Chris, the point man, turned to him. We should split up. One of us goes in there, and another sees where this way leads. Chris frowned for a second before he gave him a firm stare. Do not leave this room. If there's a door, wait for me to come back. I'm just gonna poke my head in and be right back. We don't need to get separated too. Naruto nodded, seeing what he meant and liked it. Chris shared a nod with him before he stepped over the corpse and disappeared into the room ahead of them. Naruto sighed and started on the path to his right. He already came face to face with another door. Jiggling the knob, he found that it was locked. One thing I learned from horror movies is that a locked door isn't smart to try and open. He laughed as he remembered the crappy movie he watched with Kiba and Lee one night about demons running around and possessing people. The scene where the main character tried to open the locked door and busting it down, only to meet up with more possessed people ranged through his head. He turned and kept going, stopping at the corner of the wall when he heard a familiar groan. He saw a big man that was as pale as the one that took apart Kenneth, standing with his back turned to him. Digging through his pouch, he pulled out a shuriken and flung it to the man's head, making an exit wound out the front of his head and embedding into the wall above a mirror. Sighing, he rounded from around the corner and started walking to see what was around the next. Kicking past the dead corpse, he reached a small statue with a golden arrow resting on top. Curiosity kicking in, he grabbed it and started looking it over. It was a beautiful design that would make a great collection item for people that like this stuff. He looked to the spot where his shuriken was embedded into the wall, blood and brains dripping down from the many sharp points on it. He shuddered. He wasn't taking that back. He turned back to where he split from Chris. The man hadn't come back yet. He said he was only poking his head in and coming back. What was going on in there that he was taking so long to come back? Before he could move to go back, he felt a pair of arms grab him and take him down to the ground. Naruto did a quick turn so he was on his back and saw another one of those monsters on top of him. Growling, he angled his wrist so the arrow was grazing the skull of the monster. Naruto pushed the arrow through the head of the monster, yanking it out and kicking away the dead weight on top of him. What struck him was when he pulled the arrow out, the tip fell off to the ground. He picked it up. Naruto! Chris' voice called as Naruto turned to see the SDRS member running to him. Chris came to a halt when he saw the freshly killed corpse. You alright? Naruto nodded. Yep, piece of cake. He grinned. He struck Chris with a confused glance. Where the hell were you? Found a key, he said with a frustrated tone. Where is it? Naruto asked after not seeing the supposed key. Had to leave it when I activated a trap, Naruto nodded. That explained the frustration on his part. I'm guessing we need another key to take its spot on the trap. He saw the arrowhead. What's that? Naruto shrugged. Don't know. Beats me. Maybe it's for something else around here, he guessed before he and Chris rounded the corner to see two more doors. Naruto groaned in frustration. Many freaking doors are there. Chris picked one and failed to open it. Locked, probably need that key I found. He went to the second and much to both their relief, it opened. Yes. God damn. Chris cheered as the two went on through to the next room. When they made it to the other side, however, Chris almost punched the wall. We're above the dining room. Naruto was equally annoyed. Walked in a giant circle. He looked, and to add insult to injury, he saw two more of those monster things. Wanna take out some frustration? he asked the older man. Chris nodded. Sure. The two started walking around to the two zombies. Naruto checked the other door, and unsurprisingly, it was locked with a sword engraving on the lock, whatever the hell that meant. Naruto saw Chris whack the thing in the head with his gun before he gave a very nice boot to the head to take it out. Naruto was more creative with his when he shimmied around the monster and kicked a statue into it, knocking both down and over the railing onto the floor they were standing on just a little while ago. Might have overdone it a little, he mumbled as Chris met back up with him. The two shrugged before they entered the set of doors that brought them back to the main hall. Walking down the first set of stairs that connected to the main stairs that would bring them back to the spot they met up, there was another door, and saying what the hell, opened it. Surprised the door opened, they were taken outside to the back of the mansion. Finally, Naruto said as he stretched his arms out. An unlocked door. Keep your cheers down, Chris warned. Don't know if any of them are out here or worse. Naruto nodded with a quick apology before they climbed down to the bottom of the stone steps. They followed the stone pathway until they couldn't walk anymore. Another dead end, Chris sighed as he stared at the stone decoration of a young baby in a diaper holding a bow wearing diapers. Looked like Cupid, Chris noted. He did a double turn when he saw the empty spot on the tip of the arrow. Where's that arrowhead? He asked the blonde ninja. Naruto, seeing what he saw, grinned before taking out the arrowhead and placing it into the empty spot. They heard a click and a new path opened up when the stone decoration moved back. There were more stairs that led down to a dark room, so Naruto looked to Chris. You go first? He asked with a simple grin. Chris scoffed before he took lead, Naruto following after him at a steady pace. They made it to the bottom to a dimly lit room with candles. There was a coffin that was held up with 4 chains and 4 blank spots on the walls that looked like a human face. Chris spotted a book resting on a stone. Leaving Naruto to look around, he picked it up and opened it. He frowned at the contents. He couldn't read most of this stuff, it being ineligible to read. But there were 4 sentences that he could read clear as day. A mask that sees, hears, and smells no evil. He read. And a mask that's all 3. Huh? Naruto asked after hearing that. Chris gestured him over to read it for himself. Naruto glanced at the 4 spots on the wall. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asked. Chris nodded. There's 4 masks that we need to find and bring back here. What for? I have no idea. He showed the ineligible parts of the book. When he turned the book around, he smiled when he saw a key. An honest-to-God key. Thank God. He cheered. Naruto saw the golden key that Chris held. He grinned too. Yes. He jumped in joy. We can finally go find shit, Chris nodded. First things first. Naruto nodded as well. The 4 masks. Naruto leaned against the wall of the main room, his arms dangling at his side as he went to work twirling a kunai around with his finger. He took slow and deep breaths through his nose and out his mouth as he looked across where he was standing. Chris was walking around and testing doors with the key they found, trying to see what it opened. So far, that key hadn't opened anything, just jamming in the locks of the 2 doors they tested. Chris was getting pissed, if the frown he had as he yanked the key out was any indication. You're gonna break the key if you keep doing that. Naruto called from his spot by the main door, the sound of the dogs barking still fresh outside like it was when they were chased in here. Chris flipped him off and went towards the set of double doors opposite the ones that led to the dining room. He and Chris found the key 10 minutes ago, and they were as lost as they were when they didn't have the key. They haven't made any progress in the hunt for the 4 masks, which was still baffling Naruto. A mask that sees no evil, smells no evil, hears no evil, and a mask that's all 3. Saying it 10 times didn't help Naruto in his understanding of it at all. It only confused him more than he was when Chris read it out of the book that Naruto had in his pouch. He wished he could figure it out so he and Chris can be one step closer to getting out of here. This place with psycho dogs and cannibalistic monsters wasn't helping him with his emotional state. He was so caught up in this predicament that he found himself in that he hasn't had the time to fully understand and embrace the fact that he was stuck in this world forever. He wasn't gonna see Konoha again. He wasn't gonna see his friends again. He wasn't gonna fulfill his goal and save his world from darkness. He scoffed. His world was probably in ruins by now, and his friends all dead at the hands of Madara and Obito. He turned back his attention to Chris, seeing that the man had his hands on a doorknob and actually opened the door. They weren't confined in this space any longer, much to their relief. Naruto jogged over to Chris. Nice, he patted his back, the SDRS member smirking just a little bit as he shrugged Naruto's shoulder off of him. Let's see what's behind door 70, Chris muttered as he and Naruto took a step into the room, Naruto having his kunai up and ready to go while Chris held his Glock forward with his finger dancing over the trigger. It was another empty room, some paintings over the wall, and another door off to the right wall. There was also a corridor to the left, but Naruto's instincts was telling him to not go in there, so Naruto looked to the on-edge adult. Left or right? He asked, gesturing to the directions as he asked. Chris looked to the door before he fished out the golden key again. Whatever this key opens, that's where I'm going, he stated, stepping in the direction of the wooden door to see if he can unlock it. Naruto in the meantime was hanging back and waiting to see if Chris can find them a new direction to go. All this walking and not knowing if something was just around the corner, or even behind this door, ready to eat and kill him and his companion was tiring. Things could be so much easier if he could just use his jutsus, but Naruto wasn't stupid enough to try and kill himself over it. As long as he had Chris to help him, the extra precaution wasn't necessary right now. Chris made the door turn, the beautiful sound of the lock clicking making Naruto's ears and spirits brighten up. The SDRS member gave a tired smile. Hopefully we can find a way out of here now, he hoped as he and Naruto stepped out of the room they were into a bright hallway with sets of windows and a nice tiled floor that made the one in the main room look terrible. The two were still on edge as Chris shut the door and let Naruto take a small lead. You think we'll run into any of your friends? The ninja asked. Chris sighed. Believe me, kid, when I say that I hope for that every time we go into a new room. Chris was driving himself crazy worrying about his friends. Normally he would be confident in their skills and not batter an eye over whether they were okay or not, but this wasn't a normal case. Nowhere, as far as he knew, in the SDRS training manual did it mention that they'll be prepared for a zombie attack. Naruto continued walking. Yeah, things might not be as bad as long as we. He was cut off when the glass to the window he walked by cracked, making the blond boy jump and hit his back on the painted wall, knocking down a few pictures as he connected. Son of a bitch. The boy held his hand over his chest to get his accelerated heartbeat back under control to normal speed. He noticed Chris smirking and holding in a snicker at his little display. Don't laugh at me. You would have done the same thing, Chris shrugged. Maybe I would have, he admitted before he fully grinned. But it's still funny to see it happen to someone else. He shrugged, holding a hand out for Naruto to grab and stand up with. Naruto glared before he stood up on his own, Chris taking back his rejected hand. If this wasn't a serious predicament we were in, I would have my hands around your neck, he growled before the two resumed their walk through the hallway. Chris let out another smirk when Naruto backed up to the wall when they passed by another window. Chris hit it, but he was waiting for something to happen like with Naruto. When nothing happened, he sighed in relief. You sound like my sister, Chris said in response to Naruto's threat from before. When he got a confused stare, he elaborated. That threat you made sounds like something my sister would tell me when we were kids, he explained, a smile crossing his face when he thought of his baby sister. He quickly frowned when he realized that he wouldn't see her again if he died here. Naruto stared interested and surprised at Chris' revelation. You have a sister? He asked, stopping just a few inches away from the door at the end of the hallway. He would wait since Chris had the key. Chris nodded. Yep. She's 19 and obsessed with motorcycles. Naruto didn't know what a motorcycle was but nodded anyway. She's in university right now, trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. Apparently it's gonna be more awesome than my boring job as a SDRS member. He raised his voice at the end, impersonating that of a girl. Naruto laughed. Your sister thinks your job is boring? If Chris' job had been a snooze fest, that was most certainly not the case after tonight. Chris shrugged. She's just mad I made her learn how to fight, shoot, use knives, and all that good stuff that's been saving our ass tonight and likes to rub it in that all the stuff I taught her hasn't done anything to improve her life. He explained. But if I make it out of this, I'm telling her this story and she'll never call my job boring or doubt my teachings again. You two sound close, Naruto said with a smile. Like you, our parents died young. I took care of her and raised her afterwards, and we just became close. We were all the other had growing up. He shook his head, pulling out the golden key. But enough about that. We need to find those 4 masks so we can get out of here. Naruto let the conversation drop, mostly because he can see Chris was growing uncomfortable with the direction it was heading regarding his parents. That was fine. He didn't like talking about his parents to someone he didn't know that well either. As much as he loved his parents, he just hoped he didn't end up meeting with them again anytime soon. That and Guy. Naruto was currently outside in a fenced-in area of the mansion. He and Chris branched off at the latter's request for him to scope out ahead, and so Naruto can find anything worthwhile out here. The reason he was out here and not Chris was because he had broken the lock in the door and forced it open. Chris had said that whatever was behind this door was now Naruto's problem, and that he'll look ahead and see if something amiss was there. Needless to say, Naruto was pissed that Chris left him to fend for himself, even if only for a minute or two. So I broke the door, he mumbled to himself as he looked around, enjoying the feel of the cool night air on his tense and blood-covered skin. Not my fault it was the wrong key, he thought of when he asked Chris for the key and he broke the lock from jamming too hard. Luckily the key didn't break, or he would be dog food right now. Chris' words. Not his. Naruto examined the various plants that were growing in the cart. There were some sunflowers in the lot with common houseplants thrown in there as well. For a gardener like him, it was one of the strangest set of flowers he's seen together. He eventually made it to a wall, no other direction for him to go in except the way he came where he was gonna meet up with Chris in a minute. There was a bench next to him with more green and red plants clamped together. Nothing bizarre from what he can see, but something lying face down caught his eye. He bent down and flipped it over, revealing a large sack with chemical implanted on the front. Naruto might have not been as smart or a brainiac like Sakura and Shikamaru, but he did know as a prankster that a bag of chemical can always come in handy. He wrapped his hands around the sack and threw it over his shoulder, the gun Chris had given him tucked into his waistline for quick and easy grab if anything. He adjusted the sack so it was easier to carry, one hand holding the bottom and his other dangling by his side. Something jumped over the fence, Naruto almost dropping the sack at the sudden arrival of whatever it was. He stared wide-eyed and annoyed when he saw a dog that bore a large resemblance to the ones that attacked and chased him into this mansion in the first place. "You're the one that cracked that window?" he asked, only getting a snarl as a response from the crazed canine. Naruto smirked as he placed a hand over the grip of his handgun. "This is payback for making me shit myself." The canine took that as a signal to attack, howling as it lunged towards Naruto. Naruto quickly pulled out the gun from his waist and fired a single shot that ripped through the face of the dog as it jumped up to bite him. The body fell down like a sack of bricks in front of his feet. Naruto took a step over it, looking back a second before he smirked at the fallen body of the dog. "Now if only I can find your friends that chased me here, I'll be really happy," he taunted before he turned back around towards the direction he came in, walking towards it to meet back up with Chris. Speak of the devil, he ran out the door and had his gun all ready and pointed it forward with a tense posture. He glanced at Naruto, the fallen dog, and the gun in his hand before he visibly relaxed and lowered his gun, giving Naruto a look that could have said, "You had me worried, asshole." Naruto gave a wave after tucking the gun back into his waist. "Nice of you to join." He saw Chris staring at the fallen animal. Naruto kicked the back of his heel into the dog. "Oh, this? Just something that thought it can get me." He grinned. But it didn't know that Naruto Uzumaki is too badass to be taken down by an angry animal. Chris rolled his eyes. "Yes, sure, whatever." He then noticed a large sack over his shoulder. "What the hell is that?" he asked, pointing to the giant bag slung over Naruto's shoulder. "Chemical," Naruto stated profusely. "Thought it might come in handy later." Chris only blinked in response to Naruto's defense, but Naruto had seen the look many times throughout his life that he knew exactly what Chris was thinking. "Yes, Chris, it will come in handy." He gave a small glare at Chris' bored look. Chris shrugged his shoulders. "Okay, but you're carrying it, he said as the two entered back into the mansion to continue on with their search to find the 4 masks. The masks, they still had no clue where to start looking for them. Didn't expect you to with that look you gave me. Naruto deadpanned as he held onto the sack tightly. So what's ahead? He asked. Chris sighed in what Naruto guessed to be aggravation. Doors, more doors, paintings, windows, and another door. He listed. Naruto smirked as they made it to the windows, the ninja not seeing anything abnormal outside of them. He half expected them to crack too when he and Chris walked by. To think me and my sister always joked about living in a mansion one day, Chris mused as he stared angrily at the room he and Naruto were in. Never gonna make those jokes again. Naruto nodded in agreement. I lived in an apartment my whole life and always wished that I would someday live in a big house with a family. He gave a shudder. Now I'm sure I'll never be able to look at a big house again. I hear ya, Chris agreed as they reached a double door with another wooden door just behind them. Chris looked back and forth between the two before he turned to Naruto. You wanna go to that door first? He pointed to the single door. Or through here? He nodded to the double door. Naruto looked back and forth. Let's check out the double door first, then double back and check in this door. Naruto was so done with this place. He just wanted to keep moving forward and not worry about what was behind one of the many doors. In his mind, keep moving forward and you'll find a way out. Chris nodded. Yeah, sure, he agreed as he opened the door to reveal another hallway with, not shockingly, 3 more doors from what he could see. He was close to just yelling as loud as he could and losing his sanity. This place was like a damn maze. He knew mansions were big houses, but this was like a damn fort, and to make things worse, there were 2 zombies in here that noticed them and started shuffling their way over to him, and the equally as frustrated Naruto, although the latter was more open about his anger. Everywhere we go there's more of these damn things. He bellowed as he stepped forward and held the sack of chemical with 2 hands. Chris watched as the zombie grabbed for him and Naruto, being creative, slammed the sack of chemical onto the zombie's head, the body violently falling down as its brains splattered over the floor. My feet! Naruto whined as he dropped the sack. It was just then Chris noticed Naruto was wearing sandals. He almost laughed at the realization. There's cannibal blood all over my feet. Chris rolled his eyes as he holstered his weapon and grabbed his knife, heading towards the second zombie that was all the way at the back of the hallway. Chris grabbed the fronts of its shirt before he plunged the knife into its head after bringing it in. He dropped the dead weight as he turned back to Naruto, who finally grumbled and stood up from his spot, now dragging the chemical sack instead of carrying it. Chris smirked. Probably wishing you didn't do that, right? He asked, gesturing to the drips of blood that flowed down the bottom of the sack. Naruto glared. You are 5 seconds from getting smacked in the face, Redfield. Naruto warned with a pointed finger. Chris had to smirk at the similarly to Claire. You dropped something, by the way. Chris looked down to notice that his wallet had fallen out of his back pocket when he reached for his knife. How that happened he didn't know. He picked it up and held it. He looked down again and realized a picture of his sister had slipped out through the cracks of his wrinkled old wallet. Naruto looked down at the picture that had fallen out of Chris' wallet. He only got 2 seconds to look before Chris bent down to pick it up and put it away. From what he did see, it was of a young woman wearing a red vest with a black tank top underneath. A helmet was held under her arm as she leaned back onto a bike. Her face, though, was definitely one of the prettiest Naruto's ever seen. Her red hair was tied into a ponytail, and she was smiling fondly, her brown eyes bright. If you don't mind me asking, who was that? Naruto asked Chris as the latter put his wallet into his back pocket and tapped twice to make sure it would stay. My sister Claire, Chris answered. Naruto gave a simple nod, but on the inside he was thinking something completely different. Chris has one hot sister. As for that threat you gave me before, she would definitely approve of you. Chris laughed. Threatening me, being a smartass, oh yeah, you two would be best friends. He joked, needing and liking the small moment of ease that was given. He appreciated it to breathe normally instead of in clumps. Naruto laughed too. Really now? Glad to know I have a friend. The more the merrier, I always say. He grinned, Chris seeing a twinkle in his irises that he hadn't seen from him yet. It intrigued him, but at the same time his protective side over his baby sister made him wanna punch Naruto in the nose. Yep. You and her would get along great plotting out ways to maim me, he said. She was always the little troublemaker growing up. Naruto smirked at that, making Chris stare perplexed at the small evil glint in his eyes. Wow, what a coincidence, he said. I was a troublemaker growing up too. You still are one, Chris said, pointing to his head. You've been giving me a headache since teaming up an hour ago. Hate to burst your bubble, but it's only been 25 minutes. Naruto corrected with a look of smarts and a smirk. Chris was more annoyed than he was shocked. I gotta get out of here. This place is screwing with my sense of timing. He groaned as he and Naruto entered yet another door, but into the never-ending cycle of hell. All we found was a dog whistle. Naruto was too busy being pissed at the room they were in now to listen to Chris as the man stared angered at the dog whistle in his hands. Naruto and Chris had entered a room with stairs and another room from the hallway where they killed those 2 zombies. After killing 3 more of them with a kunai and knife stab with Chris kicking and stomping on the last one, they entered another hallway of doors after climbing up the stairs and going through the door at the end of the corner at the 2nd floor. Naruto had opened one of the other sets of many doors they found while Chris stood guard. Naruto had ransacked the room and only found the dog whistle and a picture under it that showed the outside to a part of the mansion. He and Chris were annoyed but decided to see if they could open the other 2 doors. They were both locked, and the only other door that opened led them back to the main hall of the mansion where they started. Naruto set the sack of chemical down. We walked in a circle, he realized, his anger rising higher and higher by the minute. We walked in a damn circle. He managed to confirm this when he looked down and saw the same doors from before. Chris sighed. Yes, I heard you the first time, he said as he balled his fist around the dog whistle. But what the hell are we supposed to do with this? Don't ask me. Naruto shook his head. This whole place is like one giant puzzle from what I can tell. Find arrow to open back door to get key to come back here and open other doors. So many doors and only 2 of them gave us something new. He wasn't counting the golden key that was sitting in Chris' pocket with his wallet. Keys allowed them to open new doors to see if they can find something else, and Naruto was pissed that this key brought them back to square one. The picture you brought back with it doesn't help much. No point in going back there since we apparently need another key, Chris said. He looked to the door at the other side of the balcony. We haven't been back over there since we found the key. Might as well, Naruto grumbled as he dragged the sack of chemical, not even thinking of putting it anywhere near his face with the dried blood on it. It smelled worse than Kiba, and that was saying something. The 2 re-entered the 2nd floor of the dining room with tired and aggravated footsteps. Chris and Naruto walked in a straight line as they slowly hopped over the dead bodies of the zombies they killed before. Chris took out the trusty golden key and, much to their small delight, opened the door that didn't lead back to where they found the arrow. Naruto was pissed when he saw another door staring at them in the face when they entered. Walking over, he jiggled the knob and found it to be locked. He got even more pissed when Chris tried the key and got nothing as a response. That's it. He put so much force behind his kick that, like last time, he broke the hinges off the door, bringing them to an outside balcony of the mansion. Chris glared at him. You idiot! There could have been a bunch of zombies behind this door. He scolded, although he was close to doing something like this as well. I'm tired of all the doors. Naruto whined, not doing a good job of defending himself. The locked doors are mocking me. I don't want to find more keys, Chris. I just want to get out of here and figure out what the hell I'm gonna do with myself. Chris was a little lost at what Naruto was saying, but the latter just wanted to figure out what he was gonna do with his life here in this new world. He already had a hard time accepting he was stranded, but to be thrust into a place like this mansion on top of that. It made him angrier just thinking about it. We will find a way out of here, Chris promised. I'm telling you that I'm not dying in some godforsaken place like this. We'll find my team and we'll find a way to escape from here. He swore as he patted Naruto on the back. We'll work together to do so. Naruto took a relaxed breath before he gave a grateful smile to Chris. Thanks, I'm glad if I have to be stuck here with someone, it's you. Chris smiled back before he took another look and noticed where he and Naruto were. He pulled out the picture and confirmed his silent question when he saw that it matched where he and Naruto stood right now. I think you found the spot where we're supposed to use this whistle. Chris praised Naruto as he took out the dog whistle from his back pocket. Chris blew into it, no sound being heard from them but being heard from dogs around the area. Rounding from around the corner to the path in front of them, 2 dogs came running towards them. One of the dogs wore a collar with something sparkling in the front. I think we need that collar, Naruto guessed as he and Chris each pulled out their guns, knowing facing these things head-on wasn't a good idea with how fast and dangerous they were. I think so too. Chris nodded as he fired 2 quick shots to stun the canines. They both fell down, but were still alive. Naruto took that as his window of opportunity to aim down his sights and fire 2 shots through the head of the mutts. Chris kept his gun in his hand as he walked over to them and unhooked the collar from around the dog's neck. Imprinted onto the collar as well was a name. Doug Chris read before he took the object, a small coin, from the front of the collar. It just hit him that the animals that were trying to kill him and Naruto were actual dogs at one point in time. It was horrible to think something had happened to them that they turned into, well, whatever they were now. Looking at the collar's name again, he sighed heavily before he hooked it back onto Doug's neck, giving some form of humanity to the deceased dog. Naruto watched the whole thing, but never opened once to comment. He was being reminded of Kurama and his long, undetermined slumber. In a way, Kurama was dead too like Doug, and it hurt Naruto to be reminded of that. Chris examined the coin. Doesn't seem to be anything weird. He made a humming noise when he saw something on the front. He ran his finger over the surface until he put enough pressure on the coin to press something. Imagine his and Naruto's surprise when it folded outwards and turned into the shape of a key. Is it? Naruto asked hopefully, his excitement rising. It died when Chris shook his head. It's just the shape of a key. It's fake, he answered. He tapped it against his hand in a small beat. But what do we need it for? Chris was starting to agree with Naruto about this whole place being a giant maze and puzzle. Everything from the start was go to point A with item F to get to point C. Naruto sat on the sack of chemical as he tried to give it some thought. Leaning backwards so his head was upside down, he stared at the broken door that he was responsible for. He knew that there was something he was missing. He just couldn't put his finger on it. He jumped up from the sack when he thought he got it, surprising Chris. He stared at the creeped-out SDRS member with a grin. Remember when you said you found a key in that room, but there was a trap? Chris' eyes brightened when he indeed remembered that. Naruto, my friend, you are a genius, he praised, getting a larger grin from the ninja. I'll be right back. Just don't go too far, Chris warned as he took off into a sprint back to the area where Naruto found the arrow. Naruto re-entered the house slowly after Chris left, dragging the sack with him by his feet. He was starting to get exhausted lugging this thing around and hoped he found a reason to use it soon or he was gonna throw it away somewhere. Looking to the left after getting inside, he saw that there was a stairwell that led back down to the first floor. His curiosity piqued. He pressed his back against the wall and looked around to see that there was nothing up here. No zombies and no dogs. There were of course more doors, but as of threats, nothing was in sight. He walked around the railing to the top of the stairs, his shoulders slumping when he saw that there was a zombie slowly walking up the stairs. You guys just don't quit. Naruto shook his head as he waited for the zombie to get closer. Once the zombie was within arm's reach, he kicked it down the steps, watching it roll down like a tumbleweed before colliding with the floor face first. And that's that. Naruto grinned before walking down the stairs to the bottom floor. Passing over the body of the zombie, he stopped mid-step when he saw another body lying face down on the floor. He waited but nothing happened. He didn't hear any noise coming from it. He finished stepping over the body of the zombie he had killed before he decided to drop the sack to get a better look. He needed to make sure that this thing wouldn't get him or Chris later. He opened the door in front of the zombie just a crack, poking his head in to see that it was clear as day. There were some bottles with labels on them, but he wasn't the biggest expert when it came to medicine stuff. That was Sakura's field of expertise. He almost shit himself when the zombie got back up when he took another step back from the door and started running at him. Naruto didn't think these things could run. Damn it! He cursed as he sidestepped to avoid the claws of the super zombie. Were they holding out on us the whole time? He asked before he took out a kunai and got into a stance. When the sprinting zombie turned and ran again, Naruto sidestepped once more, but adjusted his wrist so his kunai plunged into the skull of the zombie as he finished stepping. He let out a breath he hadn't known he'd been holding, taking fast and uneven ones afterwards after the jump scare he's just had. What just happened here? When the hell could they run? Naruto! Chris came running down the steps after seeing him down there. Naruto was right when he said that he needed to use the fake key to take the spot of the real ones so Chris could keep it. But after leaving, a supposedly dead zombie jumped back up and ran after Chris at a speed that would make a marathon runner proud. Chris barely managed to get a shot in before the zombie got a bite. He ran back to get to Naruto so he didn't have to waste more time. The still freaked out ninja turned to look at Chris. The thing ran at me. Yeah, that's right, it freaking ran at me like someone stuck a propeller in its ass, Chris grimaced. You too, huh? Naruto looked wide-eyed at the man. Yeah, I got attacked by something just like that too. I think these things are evolving or at the very least, getting tougher. It might have something to do with whatever infected them to turn them into zombies in the first place. Naruto got onto his feet, grabbing the sack once again. He looked at Chris' hand and brightened when he saw a new key in it. Is that an honest-to-God new key? Chris nodded with a smirk. Oh, definitely. You were right in that we had to switch keys to get this one. He looked on behind him to see another door at the end of the hall. Since we're down here, we might as well keep going. Chris offered, trying to go the easiest possible route at this point to avoid as much problems as he can. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I agree. We haven't checked down here yet. Might be something here we can use later. He and Chris shared a nod before they walked down the corridor and to the wooden door at the end that Naruto swore was just the same one as all the others they've seen up to this point. Okay, I stand corrected for the 5th time. Naruto was grinning like a fool as he held a mask in his hand, dangling it in front of Chris' face as the latter swatted him away with an annoyed frown as they returned back to the main hall of the mansion from the dining room. Naruto and Chris had gone through the door and found their way to the back of the mansion where there was a plant that had a mind of its own. Chris had seen through the giant roots and saw, much to their utmost relief, a mask. They had finally found the first mask. Chris had stupidly tried to walk to it and grab it, but the plant swatted him away and forced Chris to retreat back to Naruto. But as he fell back, he saw a machine that was pumping water into the plant to keep it alive. Naruto had seen it too and, smirking at being right in keeping the sack of chemical, and mixed it in with the water before flipping the switch to spray the now poisoned water over the plant. The plant died instantly from the poisoned water and Chris had tried again to get the mask, succeeding this time in grabbing the mask. It was the mask without all. The mask that tastes, sees, and smells no evil. They were 1/4 of the way done. They just needed 3 more masks, and then they can go back to where they found the first key and the book and continue from there. Chris frowned at the grinning face of the teenager next to him. I'm not saying it again. Naruto had been making him say that he was wrong and Naruto was right about keeping the sack of chemicals since they left the room. Naruto shrugged. That's cool, but I was right about the sack. He grinned again as they started climbing the steps back to the 2nd floor. I'm gonna jam my foot in your ass if you don't shut up, Chris warned, stopping on one of the steps and holding his foot up to show that he would follow through on that threat. Naruto looked from the top step back down to Chris. He liked this guy. He reminded him a lot of himself at times with the whole sarcastic tone and the badass ways he's killed zombies so far. Naruto felt a connection to Chris because, whether the officer knew it or not, Chris was Naruto's only friend here in this new world with the hibernation of Kurama. The teenager smirked down towards Chris. Sure you will, Naruto taunted, continuing walking up and to the 2nd floor, Chris lagging behind after mumbling how Naruto was a carbon copy of Claire. The two were heading back to the hallway where they had found the dog whistle. Chris mentioned past all the repeated praise of Naruto's keeping of the sack of chemical that it might be a good idea to see if this key would open the 2 locked doors there. They walked back in the hallway, both holding either a knife or kunai as they stayed on guard. With the encounters of the running zombies, they weren't taking any chances and were more on their toes than they were before. They made it to the 2 doors, the 2 men looking back and forth to see which door they would go in. Shrugging, They decided to go in the double door and almost cheered when the new key unlocked the door. Chris slowly pushed the door open, that ominous sound of the squeaking of the hinges ringing through the dark and empty hallway. Naruto looked around them to see if something was coming before he followed Chris inside the room. There were 4 statues of knights that were pushed out. A small cage was seen at the end of the hallway with a small box stuck inside. A switch was underneath a plaque that was directly in front of Naruto and Chris. Chris took the steps forward to read the writing that was engraved on it. "Woe to those who disturb my sleep." He stared confused and perplexed of the whole thing. "What the hell does that mean?" "Don't ask me," Naruto shrugged. "There's a switch, so maybe if we press that, it'll disturb the sleep and we'll get screwed somehow." The 2 men could agree on that. It seemed obvious enough. Naruto looked at the knights, pressing a palm onto the surface of one. "Maybe these knights have to dash?" He was stopped when he put pressure on the knight and pushed it in, falling to the ground from the unexpected movement of the statue. Naruto was lying tangled up on the ground and groaning from the fall. "I hate this mansion," he growled out slowly as he picked himself up from the ground. "Something is always hurting me." Chris almost snickered. He stared at the statue that Naruto had accidentally pushed in, his brain clicking as he looked to the other 3 that were still pushed out. He smirked over to Naruto. "Looks like your little fall solved the problem," Chris said as he went to the statue across from where Naruto was still standing. Chris put all his weight on the statue as he pushed it in. They heard a click that made them think they had gotten closer to opening the cage. It quickly turned to confusion when the statue Naruto had pushed in rolled back out and smacked the Jinchuriki back to the ground. "That's it!" Naruto jumped back up. "I'm really pissed right now." He kicked the statue back in, but the one Chris pushed in came back out, the policeman moving out of the way after Naruto got hit in the back. Chris looked back and forth thoughtfully between the statues. "I'm guessing maybe we need to push them all in a certain way to get the cage to open," he deduced. He might have not been as smart as Jill when it came to any kind of puzzles, but he was sure he was right about this. At least, he hoped he was. Naruto glared at the statues before he turned to Chris. "We don't need both of us in here to push in statues. Give me the key and I'll check out the other room." Naruto just didn't want to be anywhere near these statues anymore. He was growing increasingly more frustrated with these statues and knew that another incident like the one before, and he was gonna attempt a Rasengan on them. Chris seemed to see the logic in what he was thinking and handed him the key before he turned his back to him to focus on the puzzle on hand. Naruto bid him farewell before he left the room. Rebecca Chambers was not having a good night. Her hands were moving shakily over Richard's body, trying to do the best she could with what little equipment she had on hand after the man got bit by a snake that was easily the biggest animal she's ever seen in her life. They had barely managed to get away before holding up in this room. His blood oozed down her fingers as she tried to apply pressure to his wound. His slow breaths of agony hit her scared and exhausted ones. They'd been stuck here for a good half hour already and nothing was getting better, only worse by the second. Rebecca felt things couldn't have gotten any worse for her after the previous night where she was teamed up with Billy Cohen, an ex-Marine turned fugitive, to survive something that was a horror story come to life. They barely survived and Rebecca was sure that she would get a break. How wrong she was. Richard moaned again, Rebecca doing her best to try and ease things for him by rubbing his bite wound. It was the best she can do without any serum on her. All she had was a piano script that she found in the room behind them while helping Richard get away from the snake. If this place was anything like the umbrella training facility she was in last night, and from what she's seen so far it was, then this piano script might be needed later. "Hang in there, Richard," Rebecca consoled the poisoned man. "I'll think of something," she promised, although the words came out in a whisper like if she was lying when she said them. She was silently encouraging herself that she could help and save Richard. After last night, she felt like she could do anything. Plus, she wasn't gonna lose him like Edward. She turned her head quickly when she heard the door click. She wasn't prepared right now to take on any zombie. Any gunshot sound would bring them in over this way and Richard would definitely not make it. Still, one hand found its way to the grip of her gun. The door opened, the face of a blond boy around her age appearing in the doorway with a sharp knife in his hand. He let his body in next, His stained black shirt darkened with what Rebecca could easily identify as blood. His orange pants were stained with some blood at the helm, and Rebecca spotted blood spots on his face. He looked exhausted as well. He spotted her hunched form, looking to be shocked at seeing her. The feeling was mutual, as Rebecca didn't expect to see someone else alive that wasn't a member of her team. "You're alive, right?" he asked her, his hand tightening around his bladed weapon with his face scrunched up into one of focus. Rebecca quickly saw that he was ready to attack if anything was or wasn't said that he didn't like. "Wait." She held her hands up. Yes, I am alive," she said in a rush, taking hard breaths to get air back into her lungs. Richard moaned again next to her, causing the blond boy to look at him. Rebecca quickly covered her teammate. "He wasn't bit by a zombie. He was bit by a snake," she revealed, seeing the new arrival's eyes and posture relax, which made her relax slightly too. The blond boy looked at the bite wound. "Damn!" He stared shocked. "Must have been one giant snake," he rationalized, jogging forward to get a better look at the wound. Rebecca nodded. It was bigger than anything snake I've ever seen in my life." Although she's seen a bat and a scorpion the previous night that were other candidates to the biggest animal she's ever seen. Rebecca looked over to the kneeled form of the boy intrigued. "Who are you? I wasn't expecting to see anyone else here that wasn't a part of my team." He looked at her quickly, which surprised her. "Team?" He noticed the logo on her vest that read SDRS on her shoulder. "Are you by any chance the SDRS Bravo team?" Rebecca nodded. "Yeah, why? Alpha team is here looking for you guys," he revealed, wincing slightly when he got a better look at Richard's arm where the snake had taken a large bite out of him. Rebecca gasped. "Alpha team is here?" If they were here, then that meant that they must have found out about their helicopter going down and the lack of contact from them. It didn't really surprise Rebecca now that she thought about it. She couldn't even get in contact with Enrico and the others anymore. "One of them, Chris Redfield, is in the next room over," he revealed with a jab of his thumb behind him. "He'll be here any second now. I'm just scoping out ahead for anything bizarre," he said, finally looking away from Richard and sighing. "Poor guy with this wound, he isn't gonna last much longer. He just needs serum for the poison," Rebecca said, not so ready to write Richard off just yet. "She can patch the bite itself easily." It was the venom in his veins that terrified her, and where she had nothing to work with to fix. Serum? Something seemed to click in his head before his eyes widened and he smiled. "There's a room on the first floor with a bunch of medicine in it. Maybe there's serum in there?" "Really?" Rebecca was thrilled to hear that. Finally, a piece of good news was given to her that she so desperately needed after all the horror and crap she's seen in the past 2 nights. The door opened again, this time a slightly older man wearing a green vest appearing in the hallway. "Naruto?" he called as he stepped into the room and shut the door behind him. The boy, now identified as Naruto, turned to look at him. "Chris. Good thing you're here, we got a bit of a problem here." He gestured to the bitten and agonizing Richard, whom was struggling to get his eyes to open. Rebecca looked up to him. "Chris Redfield from Alpha Team?" she asked to make certain that this was a member of the task force. Chris nodded. "Yes. Me and the rest of Alpha Team were sent in to find you guys after communication went down." He eyed her confusingly though. "But I don't recognize you." "Rebecca Chambers, medic and rear security of SDRS Bravo Team," she addressed, giving Chris the respect he deserved as a higher-ranked member. "I just joined SDRS last month." "Chris Redfield, point man and co-pilot of SDRS Alpha Team." Chris nodded before his eyes found their way to Richard's bite wound on his left arm. "Richard, what the hell happened to you?" he asked as he kneeled down with Naruto and Rebecca to get a better look at him. "He's been bit by a snake," Naruto answered for Rebecca. "And by the size of that wound, a freakin' huge one," he said. "He needs serum," Rebecca said. Naruto shared a look with Chris. "Remember where we found the fake key?" Chris nodded. "That spot where you found me after you found the new key, there's a room right there. Inside are a bunch of medicines and stuff." Chris got where this was going. "Alright, I'll be right back," he promised. He dug into his back pocket to pull out a strange mask that was missing a nose piece. He tossed it to Naruto. Another one down, he stated before he took off out the room for the medicine room. Naruto pocketed the mask in his pouch on his back. Rebecca stared at him in confusion before he decided to answer her. There's 4 of these masks hidden around the mansion. If we find them all, we can find a way out of here. Rebecca was getting a small sense of déjà vu due to the events of the previous night. At least finding masks seemed easier than getting a train to stop. She wished last night could have been as simple as this. Rebecca nodded. Let's hope. She stared at Naruto for a few seconds before she asked the question on the tip of her tongue. You're not in SDRS. It wasn't a question. She could easily tell by the way Naruto looked that he wasn't involved in any kind of police work. He looked younger than her, for God's sake. Naruto shook his head. Nope, I'm not, he confirmed, rubbing his cheek that had weird marks on them to scrape off some blood. So what brings you to a place like this? Rebecca had seen the news report that stated that the Arkley Mountains were to be closed off to the general public until things were solved up here. It didn't make sense for someone not in SDRS to be anywhere near this place unless they had a death wish. Naruto smiled. Traveling. He sighed and leaned his head against the wall. I'm not from around here. I just arrived in town an hour ago. Maybe 2? He shrugged. It's kinda hard to keep track of time around here when you're running for your life every 5 minutes. Rebecca nodded with a small smile of her own. She knew that feeling all too well. Last night felt like 10 instead of 1. If I would have known about this place, I would have stayed far away. He laughed. Actually, I take that back. Maybe I'm a little, I wouldn't say happy, but I'm kinda, what's the word I'm looking for? He tapped his chin. Relieved? Rebecca offered. Not exactly, but I'll go with that for now, he smiled. Yeah, I didn't know what I was gonna do when I got here, but now I guess since I stumbled on in here, I can help you guys get out of this death trap. Can never have too much help. Rebecca agreed. Especially in a place like this. She gestured to the area around her, getting a laugh out of Naruto and a giggle out of her. I hear ya. Cannibal monsters, crazy dogs, apparently a giant snake. It's all one giant horror story come to life. More help equals a better chance to survive. Rebecca nodded. Let's hope our numbers are enough. Chris came running back into the room shortly after, panting as he held the serum bottle in his hands. From the look of it, he ran like a man possessed to get there and back in record time. He handed it over to Rebecca. It's the right one? He asked, almost begging, not wanting to run all the way back again and waste more of whatever time Richard had left. Rebecca smiled and nodded. Yes. This is exactly what he needs. She poured the serum into his wound, making Richard wince weakly at the sudden touch on his arm. Rebecca poured a little down his throat as a precaution to make sure it went in. Can never be too safe in a zombie incident. Richard's voice weakly spoke through the room. Thank you, Chris nodded with a smile. You don't have to thank me, Richard. That's what partners and friends are for. Naruto smiled in agreement. Richard moved his unbitten arm to his belt to hand Chris a radio. Here, you might need this later, he said before he closed his eyes and fell into slumber. Chris and Naruto started to panic before Rebecca eased their concerns. He's just passed out. He'll be fine, she said. We need to move him somewhere he can rest easily. There's a bed in the drug room, Chris revealed. It's safe there too, so we have nothing to worry about. Chris wrapped an arm around Richard's torso before he hoisted him up and over his shoulder. The 2 SDRS members and Naruto headed for the drug room. After making sure Richard was somewhere safe, Rebecca volunteered to look on after him until he was better, but not before handing Naruto the piano sheet that she found, saying that they might need it, and mentioning that there was a piano in a room by the dining hall. So after searching, they found it, and were currently staring at the piano like a bunch of idiots. Naruto had stumbled across a music sheet that went accordingly with the piano sheet Rebecca gave him and set it on the piano. Still, it didn't help them figure out how to play the instrument, so Naruto tapped a few of the keys together, making a rhythm that didn't sound pleasant. Chris had to move his hands off the piano to stop the horrid noise. What do we do now? Chris shrugged. Don't ask me. The only instrument I know anything about is drums. Something like this? I have a better chance flapping my arms and flying than I do actually playing this thing. He sat at the bench and looked at the piano and music sheets that would have been laughing at him if they had any form of conscience. Jill can play piano like a badass. She rocked the Christmas party last year playing some song I can't remember. It was Symphony 9 by Ludwig van Beethoven. A feminine voice spoke from the doorway. Chris and Naruto turned around fast to see Jill Valentine standing there with a proud smile on her face. But thank you for saying I was badass, Chris. Jill! Chris stood up from his spot on the bench to run up and get a better look to make sure he wasn't just going crazy from everything that's happened. He grinned when he realized that it was really her. How'd you find us? That awful piano playing from before, she answered. I heard that from the dining hall. Naruto frowned. Hey! I wasn't that bad, he said, even though he knew he was horrendous. Jill smiled at him. Nice to see you alive, Naruto, she nodded. She looked back to Chris. Been watching him the whole time? Chris nodded. Yep. He noticed the lack of a man in a red vest with a magnum. Where's Barry? We split off a little bit ago to try and find a way out, Bravo team, or you guys. Jill said before scowling. After tonight, I am never living anywhere other than an apartment. All this running around like a douchebag killed my plans of buying a house of my own. Chris and Naruto snickered at her declaration. Well, we found Richard and Rebecca of Bravo team. Richard was bitten by a snake, so he's resting in the mansion drug room. Rebecca is there watching him. Chris said. Jill nodded. What else you two been up to? We've been looking for masks to unlock something at the bottom of the mansion. He tapped his foot in indication. So far we only found 2 and we need 4. Jill blinked. Wait, masks? She dug behind her pockets before she pulled out a mask that looked oddly familiar to the 2 Naruto and Chris found. It was missing the mouthpiece that isn't anything like this. Naruto jumped and cheered, spooking Jill just a little bit with his a little too much and out of place happiness. Yes! Naruto exclaimed. Now we just need 1 more and then we're good. Chris ignored his cheering. We almost got killed by a plant to get 1 and Naruto there is a little mad at statues that knocked him down while we were getting the second one. He explained. Jill still was a little weirded out but nodded anyway. Me and Barry found this one in a room filled with birds that tried to peck us to death when we solved the puzzle in there. It was easy for you, wasn't it? Chris deadpanned. Jill smirked. Maybe just a little bit. She pocketed the mask again. But back on topic, she took the spot where Chris was sitting not too long ago. She cracked her knuckles. Let's see if playing piano helps us further. She glanced over the music notes. Moonlight Sonata, my favorite. Chris and Naruto stood back and let Jill work her magic. Her fingers worked over the keys like magic, Chris staring amazed at the way Jill handled it while Naruto closed his eyes to enjoy the peaceful music. Jill concentrated on the notes, while smiling to herself about her success. Once she reached the final note, a piece of the wall opened up to reveal a secret passage. All 3 looked inside from where they sat or stood and saw that there was only a golden emblem inside. Jill stood up from the bench with an accomplished smile. Looks like my music skills came in handy. She blew on her fingers like if they were on fire and stood triumphant. Chris could only nod. Thank God you came here or else we wouldn't have been able to do that. He pointed to the wall that moved up. Naruto agreed. You bailed our asses out, Jill, both with the mask and now this. Jill smiled. Glad to be of service. Thanks a lot, Naruto, Chris sarcastically said as he, the boy in question, and Jill, who was gonna be tagging along with them from here on out, stared down the giant snake Chris guessed bit Richard. The golden emblem that they received, which they had to replace with the emblem in the dining hall, something they figured out when Chris went to get it and gotten trapped inside the wall after it came back down, activated the grandfather clock in the dining hall. Jill had used her puzzle skills to make the 2 handles point in the desired directions and had gotten them another key, which after combining their knowledge on where they've been already, they realized went to a door somewhere upstairs. They went into the room where Chris and Naruto found Rebecca and Richard, the latter having seen another door while there. They entered the new door and found a dusty one that opened with the new key Jill gotten them. Upon entering, Naruto's advanced senses helped him to see something at the far end of the room. I found the last mask. He was really wishing he hadn't yelled that because the moment the words left his mouth, the snake came slithering through the ceiling and hissed down at them. "This looks like something Orochimaru would conjure up," Naruto had muttered after Chris' sarcastic little comment. Jill looked back and forth between them. "Boys, now's not the time to fight each other. We need to get that mask and get out." The two guys nodded slowly before the giant snake lunged at them. Chris helped Jill out of the way while Naruto dodged on his own, his pants being ripped slightly as he barely scraped past the snake. The team threw a pair of shuriken in the snake's eyes, the giant animal hissing angrily and painfully at Naruto's little attack. Chris took off for the mask while Jill provided cover with 2 shots from her handgun. Naruto was wishing he can use a Rasengan on the snake, but his chakra reserves were still recovering from his fall into this world. Despite a lot happening in the last 2 hours, he technically only just got here. His chakra wouldn't be back up to fighting levels until the next morning. He settled for a paper bomb attached to a kunai instead. "Hit the deck," he instructed, Jill listening as he jumped high and threw the kunai bomb down the mouth of the snake. When it hissed again, the boom went off and smoke started coming out the snake's mouth. It retreated into a hole in the wall, leaving the 3 alone in the dusty attic-like room. Naruto looked when Chris grabbed the mask. "Let's go!" the older man yelled as he took off in a run back to them. The 3 exited the room and breathed sighs of relief. Jill smiled at Chris. "Good job," he smiled back. "Thanks, but Naruto really kicked it to that snake." He turned to the blonde, whom was leaning against the wall. "Hey, what was that thing you used?" Chris was cut off when Naruto fell forward unconscious, Jill gasping in shock as their eyes fell to his ripped pants. A bite mark was on his ankle. Jill's eyes widened as Naruto collapsed in front of her and Chris. Her rapid breathing, due to nearly getting eaten by some giant 20-foot snake just moments ago, became pretty much her choking on the air that clogged up in her lungs. She stared worryingly at the fallen boy beneath her, taking in the sight of the bloody and quickly swelling bite mark on his ankle. Purple liquid, quite obviously the poison that was implanted into him, was oozing out in small doses from the 2 fang-size holes. Mixing with the poison was streams of blood, creating some sickly dark red color that stained Naruto's skin. The new color crawled slowly down Naruto's foot with the sound of the liquid dripping onto the wooden floor echoing into the tense quiet room. Her mind was racing with things that she could do to try and help him, but none of them checked out due to her not really knowing anything medical. Sure, she knew something about chemicals, but not enough to get the poison out of Naruto's leg without any medicine. She wasn't even sure where the medicine room was exactly. Naruto and Chris told her about Richard, but when they said that the medicine room was on the 1st floor, she felt that could have been anywhere. This place was so huge that really didn't help in narrowing down where the room was. They could mean right below her, but Jill would end up on the other side of the mansion. Based on this night's events, she wouldn't put it past that happening. Her face paled as Chris kneeled down to Naruto's fallen body, shaking his shoulders to try and get him to wake up. The kid's breathing was ragged, coming in very short verses that Jill wouldn't have known was happening if she didn't look. His chest was rising very slow, and only getting slower as each second passed on by. Chris looked really concerned and scared for the kid's well-being. Jill knew that they were together throughout the majority of this nightmare, fighting zombies and crazy creatures together. She had to figure that they had developed some kind of connection. Men just seem to bond with one another by killing shit. And this night has been filled with nothing but killing one thing after another. Jill had her fair share of that this night as well. She and Barry had ran into many zombies, dogs, and even crows and wasps. She couldn't count the number of times something had come close to biting her. There was too many to even guess. The number would be too huge. She hadn't run into any of the other members of Bravo Team, and Captain Weskier had become a ghost of sorts. Even Barry seemed to be running off every now and then to do his own thing and leave Jill alone. She was lucky that she stumbled onto Chris and Naruto when she did. She appreciated the company and help. Being in this place alone with no idea where anyone was gave her unsettling nerves in her otherwise strong stomach. Not even the monsters here did that, and there were enough different varieties of disgust and shit your pants scary here that would make any normal person blow chunks. Even if the wasps freaked her out a little more than others due to her dislike for flying bugs. She encountered the wasps in some room on the 2nd floor, after forcing a locked door open with her boot in a moment of hysteria, and only found some kind of crest with a symbol for wind on it. What it meant, she hadn't the faintest idea. Still, she held onto it after seeing the layout for this place, and the track record of old items being needed for later. Just like how they needed the masks, they may need the crest for later. The pained groan that barely escaped Naruto's lips had Jill's heart stopping for a second. Even if she didn't know him as well as Chris might, she didn't want him to be in pain. Especially since it was poisoned from a giant mutant snake? She wouldn't wish that on anyone, even those who deserved it. Naruto's pain gave her really bad chills in her spine and chest. He was just a kid. A kid that reminded her a little bit of Chris' sister Claire, whom she had gotten along with the few times she's dropped by to visit Chris. A great girl, she remembered. A little nuts, but great. Really pretty too, but Claire told her that she didn't like the compliment, saying some shit like she heard it one too many times and it was annoying to hear now. She almost laughed, but Naruto's barely edible gasp silenced her once again. He seemed like such a nice guy. The stupid grin that he had on his face as they traveled to this place to get the final mask made her want to smile back. The way he seemed to somehow stay positive in this bleak situation was admirable. Jill didn't know anyone who would try and retain some kind of happy emotion in this place. Maybe someone who was crazy. Thinking on it, she quickly realized that Naruto was kinda crazy. Some of the remarks he made about the zombies being retarded cannibals had her laughing for some time on the way here. Chris laughed too, but he shook his head more than he laughed. Jill chalked it up to Chris having heard a good number of jokes like that all night. They all sounded stupid or crazy. Just like him. He was crazy, but unique. A good kind of unique. One she didn't want to see die so young, she followed Chris' lead, kneeling down and looking over Naruto's wound. The skin was starting to swell up badly, but it wasn't clear if it was from the poison or from the bite itself. She didn't dare touch it, not knowing the pain it could and most likely would bring Naruto if she did. Naruto? Chris had his hand over the poisoned boy's neck, checking for a pulse. Chris' relaxed breath indicated there was still one there. Jill could barely see the rise and fall of Naruto's chest now. It was at a slight standstill, not falling, but not rising either. He's in really bad shape, Chris. Jill stated the obvious to him as his eyes darted all around Naruto's barely moving body. He needs some antidote, or he's gonna die. You don't think I know that? He snapped, regretting it after the look Jill gave him. I'm sorry. It's just although he's a real pain in the ass and never shuts up, he's a great kid. We've been through so much shit these past 3 hours together. More than anyone will ever go through with anyone their whole lives, which I wouldn't even have if not for him. He remembered all the times Naruto's killed something to save Chris and get him to the next life and death situation, only to repeat the cycle and save his life again, while Chris would occasionally do the same to him. Jill nodded. Naruto saved hers too against that snake. She was sure she would be dead if he hasn't used that explosive to distract the snake. He's your friend, Jill finished for him, Chris nodding slowly in response to Jill's declaration. Yeah, he's my friend, Chris sighed. And I don't want any more of my friends to die. Chris would kill to hear Naruto make some stupid remark to his little confession. He could just picture the words coming out the kid's mouth that was kinda gay the way he admitted they were friends. Although upon further thinking, he concluded that maybe Naruto would have taken it in stride and admit they were friends too with that stupid grin of his on his face. The kid seemed to love the idea of making friends. He was all for being best friends with Claire, and Naruto hasn't even met her yet. He didn't want it to end like this. He refused to let it end like this. He's known him for a total of 3 hours, but Chris owed this kid his life. He wouldn't have thought to take that bag of chemical that ended up getting them one of the masks, so he helped them get closer to escaping. He wouldn't have gotten through some of their encounters with the zombies and the dogs if Naruto wasn't there to bail him out. And he could have been the one on the ground dying if Naruto didn't use his explosive device to get the snake to retreat. Hell, maybe the mutant would have eaten him whole. He owed Naruto his life, and he would do whatever he could to save his. He also thought about what would Naruto do if the roles were reversed, and Chris was the one on the ground with the bite wound. There was no doubt in his mind that Naruto would do anything he could to help him. Kid was an saint. With that in mind, Chris' choice was abruptly clear. He stood up. I'm going. Jill stared up at him. I'm going to that medicine room to get the antidote. Jill gave him a pointed look. I have no doubt in your abilities to defend yourself from these monsters, Chris. But your skill in medicine is, how do I put this, horrible. She answered honestly. Chris couldn't tell Advil from Tylenol if his life depended on it. He could go and think he got antidote for the poison, but it turned out he instead got some medicine that helped a headache. Chris frowned just a tiny bit. I know I'm not the best with medicine, Jill. He sighed. Still, I gotta try something. I know you do, Chris. Jill sympathized. But you also gotta take into account the possibility that you'll take something that could hurt Naruto more. Chris frowned again, but made no comment. Rebecca is most likely not there anymore. She would have moved Richard to a safer place. If she were still there, I would say go for it. Jill gave him a sad look. Unless you can find her, go back to the medical room, and then get back here before the poison fully circulates through Naruto's system. I don't see how we're gonna do this, Chris growled, punching the wall behind him hard enough to splinter off chunks of wood. He saw the reasoning for Jill's thinking. Even if he were to take everything from the room, it still wouldn't help their chances in saving Naruto. He saw the labels on some of the bottles when they brought Richard in, and none of them were labeled in a way that Chris knew how to read. He couldn't tell one thing apart from the other, and anything Rebecca had said as she rumbled through the vials and bottles was lost on Chris. Naruto had put it best for him. The what goes with the couldn't have said it better himself, but anyway, he was still gonna try. Even if he gave something that didn't help Naruto, and he still ended up dying, at least Chris could tell himself at night when he couldn't sleep that at least he tried. At least he would if he even managed to live past this, he sighed as he faced Jill again. Even if he still dies, he checked the clip in his handgun, seeing he had 7 bullets left in this clip. He put the clip back in. I'm still gonna try to save his life, Jill nodded. She could understand that. Even if the odds were very low against them, she saw it was better to try and fail than not try and living with the guilt that you could have tried. She just wished she had a definite answer so they wouldn't fail at all. I'll stay with him, Jill offered. You go and get anything that you feel can be used. Before Chris could nod, the sound of the doorknob turning silenced their breathing and forced the air back down their throats. Chris took a offensive stance with his weapon raised as Jill kept a hand on Naruto's chest and held her handgun up with a single hand. The door slowly opened, the barrel of a gun entering their sights before they noticed the small hand holding the gun. 2 seconds later, the form of Rebecca Chambers waltzed into the tiny hallway. Chris noticeably relaxed upon seeing her. Man, am I glad to see you, Rebecca? He gave her a small smile, one she returned before she saw the fallen form of Naruto on the floor. She let out a gasp. What happened to him? She rushed over, bending down and falling to her knees to examine his damaged body. That snake that bit Richard, Chris slowly responded, figuring that was all Rebecca needed to catch up on what happened to Naruto. Indeed, she caught on quickly. Oh no, she whispered, keeping a palm on Naruto's chest, feeling a very faint heartbeat behind his skin. Chris looked down to Jill. Rebecca, this is Jill Valentine. She's another member of Alpha Team with me. Jill gave a nod over to the young Bravo member. We can have introductions later, she said. Right now, Naruto is gonna die if we don't get him something to fight off this poison, she reminded. Chris gave a smile of realization. It's actually a good thing you're here, Rebecca. Her eyes were on him. I was gonna go back to that medicine room, but I wouldn't know what to take for this situation. I got lucky with that first serum bottle I found for Richard. Rebecca nodded, seeing where he was going with this. Okay, I get it. I'll accompany you to get the serum while Jill here stays with Naruto. She looked to the other female in question. Try to bleed out as much of the poison as you can. That can keep him alive a little longer. Jill nodded, wrapping her hand around Naruto's ankle and already going to work with her part of the job. Chris brought out his knife as Rebecca stood back up. Time to go, he said. He saw Rebecca give a nod to him as she stood back up. Chris paid Naruto a glance. You better not die on me, Blondie. You still have to work with my sister to maim me. He and Rebecca then headed towards the door. Rebecca exited out the room first as Chris stood in the doorway. He cast another glance over his shoulder to Naruto's body, seeing his pange breathing. He exited right after, feeling more determined than he had in years to accomplish something. Jill gave a tiny smile as the door closed. I can see it now, she nodded. How close you are to him, Chris, she continued to bleed out the poison. That closeness is why you won't fail. You'll save him and you two will be back to making horrible jokes and being the best of friends in no time. Chris closed the door, his hands still clasped around the doorknob as the painted image of Naruto's dying form stayed in his tired and exhausted mind. His chest immediately went to constricting at the reminder of his dying friend. Chris, Rebecca's voice brought him away from his thoughts. He nodded. Yeah, he mumbled as he dropped his hand from the doorknob. No time to waste. Let's get moving. The two ran, the clock that only they could hear ticking away faster than they would have liked. Where am I? Naruto found himself in a black space, hovering around like a hawk looking down at its meal. He didn't remember coming here. He remembered being in a room with Chris and Jill and some giant snake. Oh yeah, the snake bit him. His eyes widened as a thought came to him. I'm dead! He screamed. What? I can't be dead. The snake didn't rip anything off, but it was poisonous. He recalled that guy Richard that Rebecca was tending to when he met her. Damn it! He couldn't move his hands or else he would be grabbing at his head. Actually, now that he thought about it, he couldn't move anything. How could I be so careless? I'm a ninja, for God's sake. I should be able to dodge a snake. He stopped with his mental screaming as it was only giving him a headache. He glanced around the black area, only seeing darkness stretch for long and long acres of space. Actually, that sounded weird, he sighed. I wonder if I killed the snake at least. If I am gonna go, I at least wanna have taken my assailant down with me. He knew that with Kurama on rest due to cushioning the fall between dimensions, he won't be able to wash out the poison. Although it felt like years since he came here, it's only been 2 hours at most. In simpler terms, he was screwed. I can't believe I failed, he mumbled. I promised to help Chris and the others survive this and get out of here, but it looks like I checked out before that could happen. If he could, he would ball his fists. I failed my home too. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, everyone, I abandoned them and they're all probably dead. Dead because I couldn't stop Madara. Tears fell down his face. I thought maybe I could make up for that here. That maybe I could help the people here and be able to sleep at night. But it looks like I messed that up too. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm sorry I didn't help you and your friends. I hope you guys get out alive and you see your sister again. His vision was clouded by a white light that opened up above him. It was almost like a rift, spreading out slowly until it was a tiny beacon in the darkness he was trapped in. Huh? He obviously asked as he saw tiny rays of light shining down towards him. Yep, I'm dead. Naruto? He blinked at his name being called. Huh? He asked again. Who's calling me? Stay with me. They'll be back soon. Wait a second, is that Jill? He wondered as he listened to the voice. What's she talking about? They? Who's they? He blinked. Wait, so I'm not dead, he grinned. Hell yeah! I knew I wasn't dead. He cheered. That meant he was currently hovering between life and death, and still had a chance to make it. If he wasn't hearing things, then whoever Jill meant was trying to save him. Is Chris one of them? Much to his surprise, he was slowly flying upward to the rift above him. He wasn't arguing. Now that he knew where he was exactly and where Jill's voice was coming from, he wanted to go faster. I still have a chance, he realized. I can still help Chris and everyone else escape here alive. I haven't failed yet. He never sounded so relieved in his life. He was pretty damn lucky that he was even offered a second chance at all. Well, that was only if whoever Jill was talking about saved him. I swear if Chris is one of those people and he fails to save me, I'm gonna haunt his ass for the rest of his life. He swore as he flew past the rift, being surrounded and encased in light as he went blind. Chris jammed his knife into the skull of a zombie that was on the second level above the dining room. He could have sworn he and Naruto had cleared this floor when they were exploring the mansion the first time around. He guessed that somehow they managed to get through the doors. God help him if they were getting intelligent. They were all screwed if that happened. Rebecca had settled for a gunshot instead of a knife, probably due to being short in stature and not wanting to risk going in for hand-to-hand combat. He totally understood. Better to be safe than dead. He wiped his brow as he sheathed his knife. These things just don't quit, he commented. Rebecca nodded in agreement. It's like they spawn in when you walk into the room. Made even worse that me and Naruto already cleared this floor, he pointed to the still very much dead corpses that weren't just put down by him and Rebecca. Saying his friend's name, however, got Chris to pipe down, having temporarily forgotten about his state in favor of fighting to survive. Geez, that was the worst choice of words he could say to himself. Rebecca noticed his sudden muteness. You're close to him, aren't you? Chris kinda saw that coming, knowing that his relationship with Naruto was kinda confusing, even to him. They got along pretty well, but they antagonized one another a lot during their solo 2-hour journey together. The one that stuck to Chris the most was the chemical bag that Naruto found that Chris called worthless. Why? Naruto proved him wrong, and the grin on his face made Chris wanna punch him in the mouth. Now, he would like to see that grin again. At least he would be okay, Chris shrugged. We get along and I guess we respect each other. We only just met. We're still strangers to each other in ways, Rebecca ohayed in response. I just assumed since you two get along so well. She checked her ammo, seeing she had 8 bullets left before she continued. Plus, you're so keen on saving him, Chris chuckled. Yeah, I guess I am, he admitted. He checked his ammo too, seeing that he had 6 bullets. He should have taken the clip Naruto had from Kenneth's gun. He needed it right now more than the kid did. He then placed a hand on the doorknob to the door that he recalled led to the medicine room. He had his Beretta raised with one hand as Rebecca had hers raised with two. Sharing a nod with her, the two sucked in a breath as he shoved the door open, taking point with Rebecca behind him on alert. No zombie in sight. That was either really good or really bad. Chris didn't waver as he walked forward. He wasn't sprinting, but he wasn't tiptoeing either, since time was something they did not have right now. He and Rebecca passed the door where he and Naruto went out to use the dog whistle. It was still wide open, Naruto's kick having ruined any chance of the door ever closing again. What happened here? Rebecca asked from behind him. Chris had to smirk. Naruto got angry from all the doors we were finding, so he kicked the hinges off of this one in anger. He explained. Rebecca was dumbstruck. Did he take into account that there could have been zombies behind there? Naruto? PFT, not a chance, Chris shrugged. We found dogs instead. Rebecca winced, remembering the crazed canines she had seen and heard around the outer rims of the mansion. It frightened her in a way James Marcus hadn't been able to do the night before. They circled the corner to the short corridor of 3 doors, all locked still, and saw that there were 3 more zombies here. 2 were shuffling around the doors and another was around the corner near the staircase. When we need something here, they're all ready to strike us. Chris scoffed as he unsheathed his knife. That's the way the world works, Rebecca nodded, taking aim towards the one alone. Wait, Chris stopped her. Save the bullet. We're gonna need them later. He holstered his gun. If he gets too close to me, fire. I'll try to kill them all with my knife. As her superior, Rebecca nodded to his plan, even if she wasn't particularly a fan of it. She held her finger in front of the trigger, as she watched the lone zombie like a hawk eyeing its next meal. Chris tightened his hold on the knife so that there's no chance of it loosening in his grip. Walking towards the first of the 2 nearest zombies, he slashed horizontally across, making the zombie fall off to the side from the attack. With one zombie stumbling, Chris used this as his chance to grab the second by the neck. The undead creature made it very difficult to keep that hold, as it chomped towards his neck with its hands grabbed around his vest. Chris groaned as he held the knife under the chin of the zombie, the tip digging into the flesh of the rotten creature. With the first zombie regaining balance, and the third making its way towards him, Chris dug the knife through the chin of the zombie. Its grip died with it as Chris shoved the corpse to the first zombie he slashed, the sudden force causing both to fall to the ground. Chris! Rebecca's voice warned him of the incoming third zombie. Chris turned around to see her finger itch towards the trigger. Do not fire that weapon! He commanded in an authoritative tone, one that would make Weskier proud. Rebecca lowered her finger as Chris met the zombie halfway. Not wasting any time, he shoved the zombie over the railing as it collided with the stairs. It bounced off like a kid in a bouncy house and plummeted down to the ground similar to a bag full of rocks. The squashed head with blood oozing out was all the answer Chris needed that zombie wasn't gonna be a problem anymore. That left one that was currently struggling to get out from under the zombie that Chris threw at it. He stepped towards the zombie before wasting no time and slamming the knife into its skull, twisting it for good measure before yanking his weapon out. Rebecca eyed the two dead bodies. Good work, sir. She congratulated to the Alpha member. Chris nodded. Thanks. He holstered the knife and took out the gun again. Let's hurry. Naruto probably doesn't have too much longer, Rebecca agreed and followed Chris down the stairs, making the effort to avoid the blood puddle that Chris had created when he threw the zombie over. Making it to the door, they opened it up to the familiar medicine room. They were, however, surprised at the discovery, or rather lack of one. Richard was missing. Shouldn't he still be resting here? Chris asked. Rebecca nodded rapidly. I told him I would be right back when I left here. Why'd he leave? Now on top of the race back to Naruto, they had to replace Richard back on the missing persons list. Why couldn't one thing go right tonight? We gotta worry about him later, Chris interjected. Naruto's life is the priority right now. Rebecca went to work rummaging through the shelves of the many vials of medicine. She swiped, she cursed, and she grew aggravated before she seemed to find what she was looking for. Did you get it? Chris asked. Rebecca grabbed a small bottle. It says snake antivenin. This is what he needs. Chris grinned like if he just hit the lottery 5 times in a row. Then let's hurry back. Rebecca held the bottle in her hand as she double-checked to make sure. Satisfied, she pocketed it before she turned to Chris. Lead the way. Naruto's vision became cloudy as he barely opened his eyelids. The dampened ceiling was barely audible behind his foggy eyes, high-pitched noises filling his ears as his body worked to try and regain consciousness. He could faintly make out the feeling of something gripping his ankle. There would be tiny pressure that felt more like a prickle for 1 second and then would subside the next before repeating. With moving his head being too difficult for the moment, he had to hope that it wasn't one of those zombies trying to eat him. With his luck the last few hours, it wouldn't surprise him. Naruto caught something in his ear that didn't sound like something blew up a little too close to home. A living person was near him since he very easily figured out that these zombies can't speak. Huh, Naruto, who's calling me? Chris? He would have shaken his head if he could. No, too feminine, even for him, unless his voice suddenly got higher the last couple minutes or hours or however long I've been knocked out. He would have laughed. Oh, that would be awesome. He was getting his vision back slowly and his hearing was improving. His eyes caught sight of the face of Jill, her blue hat acting as a beacon for Naruto to focus onto. So that's who was calling him, he figured. Naruto? She asked, not too sure if she was seeing this right. His breathing had gotten lighter, and she swore she saw his eyes moving. She passed it off as wishful thinking when he didn't do it again. She was needless to say surprised to see him conscious again. I never noticed it before somehow, he weakly said. Probably due to only really being around you once. He continued. Jill was confused. What? He gave a weak grin. You're really pretty, he complimented. He barely widened it when Jill blushed. You and Chris' sister Claire are both really pretty. He really didn't know why he was saying this. The thoughts just came to his head and his mouth spoke them. Maybe the poison was making him act more than think. Chris' sister? I saw a picture of her when he dropped his wallet. He explained. Very cute. Jill smiled. Don't call her that in front of Chris. He'll think you're working something on his baby sister. PFT. Chris doesn't scare me, Naruto scoffed. You haven't seen overprotective Chris yet. That Chris scares even our captain, and he's a stoic bastard. They shared a laugh. Naruto's died down as he asked what was worrying him greatly. I'm gonna die, aren't I? He asked in such a chilling tone that it almost made Jill stagger back. She would have had she not been on her knees bleeding out the poison. The way he said it sounded like he had already resigned himself to his fate. Jill hoped she was just over-dramatizing things. Chris and Rebecca are getting the antidote for you, she said. You're gonna make it. Naruto laughed. Jill blinked in confusion. Sorry, it's just that I said something like this once to a friend of mine right before he died. Jill gave him a sad look. Well, we're not gonna let you die. What are you doing to my leg? He'd been meaning to ask. Bleeding out the poison. This way, you'll last longer and give Chris and Rebecca a little more time to get what they need to save you," the female alpha member stated. Naruto was in awe. "That's smart," he mumbled before laughing. "I guess I should say thanks for keeping me alive," she smiled. "It's my job to help people and to keep them safe. I also happen to like you, Naruto. You're a good kid, and you're a good woman," he answered back. "Remind me a lot of a woman who was like my grandmother when she wasn't throwing tantrums and punching holes in the wall." He would have saddened upon thinking of Tsunade, but he was still a little out of it, and still had trouble keeping his eyes open. Jill laughed. "I guess I'll take that as a compliment," she said. "It was meant to be one, so good." They shared a laugh. The tension of the invisible death clock that was above Naruto's head was momentarily forgotten, although Jill never quit in her job of bleeding out the poison. "Thank you," Naruto suddenly said. "For what?" Jill was honestly surprised to hear him say that. He didn't have to thank her for anything. She was just doing her job and what was right. That wasn't called for any thanks. "Keeping me alive when you can be out there looking for a way out." Naruto didn't want to be a burden to Chris and Jill. In a place like this, extra baggage would only end in your death if you weren't focused on the task at hand. He didn't want to be what would end in their demise. "We have all the time in the world to figure a way out," Jill said, appalled at Naruto's answer. "I'm not giving up on you until you're dead, and neither are Chris and Rebecca. We'll keep going until you take your final breath, and we're not gonna let it make it that far." Naruto was touched. He wanted to cry. He barely knew these people, but yet they were risking their lives to save him. It was a beautiful thing to him. "Jill, thank you so much," she nodded with another winning smile. "No problem, Naruto. Plus, we can use little tricks like the one you used against that snake to get us on out of here," he grinned. "I may or may not have a few more like it." That was true, although he wasn't sure how long he would have to wait before he could use jutsu. Although it felt way longer than it actually was, he's only been here for 2 or 3 hours. "Well, I can't wait to see him." The door slammed open, Chris and Rebecca barging in with speed that would knock even his father on his ass. "We got the antidote," Chris exclaimed. "Oh, thank God." Jill was relieved. "You're gonna be okay, Naruto." Rebecca smiled ecstatically at the good turnabout they had. Naruto's smile matched hers. "Thank you." He was given the bottle to drink, finding the taste revolting but didn't hesitate in swallowing it. They all waited a minute before Naruto started to get color back to his skin. He had his vision back 100%, and was getting feeling back to his wounded ankle. Naruto stood up, which made Rebecca worried. "You gotta be careful," she pointed out. "Too quick and you'll get dizzy. Your body is still in shock too from the poison." "I've been through worse," he commented. "Thank you for the worry, though. I really do appreciate it." He smiled, which made the young lady blush. Chris nodded. "Glad you're not dead, kid. Glad you're still a prick," Naruto countered. Chris frowned while the girls giggled. "Still, thanks for risking your ass for me. All part of the job," he said. He did smile a little on the inside seeing that the kid would be okay. He already failed a few of his friends tonight. He was glad he at least helped save Naruto's life this time. Naruto nodded. "Let's get out of here." No one argued that. 5 minutes later, the trio of Naruto and the 2 alpha members were back in the main hall of the mansion. Rebecca said that she was gonna continue looking for Richard and the rest of Bravo team while they solved this mask business. Despite Naruto's protests that she stay where they can all protect each other, Rebecca kindly said that it would be faster this way. She was right. None of them wanted to spend a second longer in this mansion than absolutely necessary. So, Rebecca was off on her own, much to Naruto's chagrin, which Rebecca felt very flattered due to. Chris saw an amazing opportunity for teasing, so he playfully nudged his shoulder as they walked towards the staircase. "You and Rebecca," Naruto groaned. "It's not like that, Chris." He did have a tiny blush at being accused, something that had Jill giggling. "I just want to see everyone make it out alive. All of us together will make that go smoothly," he argued. "We'll eventually meet back up with her, Barry, and Captain Weskier," Jill said. "They're all pretty tough. They'll stay alive long enough to find Bravo Team and us. Then we can leave here for good and show you the wonderful city of Raccoon." Naruto laughed. "A city is named after an animal?" He couldn't believe it. Although, now that he thought back, he had villages in his world named after rock and sand, so maybe it wasn't as weird as being named after an animal. Jill shrugged. It's a great town, she said, not at all fazed by Naruto's comment. Great scenery as well. I'll be sure to give you a grand tour once we leave here, she almost said if, but refrained from doing so due to Naruto's earlier promise that he'll help them get out. She wanted to see how that worked out, so she'll assist him how she can. Naruto smiled. It's a date then, Jill smirked. I'm way older and way out of your league, kiddo. Naruto's eyes bugged out at the comment. Hey! Chris and Jill lost it, both exploding into fits of laughter. It was a welcome addition to the seemingly endless pain and dread they had been enduring the entire night. Naruto frowned at their seemingly laughing at him. It's not funny! The two STRS members halted their laughter. Okay, Chris nodded. We'll shut up with the laughing. For now. He added to himself. He would be enjoying reminiscing about this later if he lived to see the next sunrise. I'm sorry, Naruto, but that was funny. Jill shrugged, still smiling slightly at Naruto's now defeated face. She pinched his cheek. But I'll gladly take you up on that date. Wow, he shows up and gets a date from Jill in 0% the amount of time it takes other guys to even ask her, Chris observed. And this is the first time she agreed. I didn't think she knew how to say yes to a date. It was why Chris didn't ask her out himself. Not for fear of rejection, but because it was a waste of time if Jill was gonna say no anyway. Guess he was proven wrong. Naruto slapped away her fingers. You can do without the pinching, he whined, getting another small laugh from his future companion. He paled when he looked behind Jill's shoulder. Chris. Chris looked where he was looking, almost screaming when he saw a door that he swore wasn't there before. He felt bubbles of anger, resentment, and even agony build in his chest. He really hated doors now. No, he shook his head. Screw it. We got the masks, so I'm going back to that place we found the key. Jill joined in the staring at the door. We need to check it anyway, Chris. Someone can be over there. Barry, Captain Wesker, any of Bravo team. We can't just ignore a lead. Plus, try explaining to your friends that you left them to die just because you got lazy. Naruto snickered. I would love to see that, he cracked. Chris frowned. Fine, let's go see what's behind door 5000. Chris and the others were now wishing they stayed behind. They were in a greenhouse-like area on the outside, many different tree branches dropping leaves onto the crystalline structure floor. A glass table was situated behind a clear window that extended ×3 to a corner where you can enter the plant room. It was a nice sight to behold besides all the dead plants, but the dead plants weren't what were making them want to turn back. No, they found a member of Bravo team. What was bad about this? He was dead. Many holes were in his skin. His now gray-skinned head bent down with his black hair flowing in the small breeze they felt. His blue SDRS vest was dirty and also had holes in it. His arms slumped to the side as he remained still in the chair like a deformed mannequin. Chris was the one to speak first. Forrest, Joe gasped. No, Naruto wasn't sure what to say or do. Sure, he felt bad that their friend was dead, but he didn't know him. He couldn't offer any words that weren't already said when he and Chris found Kenneth. You can only say you were sorry so many times before it became like a track you played when things got dim. Jill walked over to get a better look, Chris only staring at the slumped form of his friend. She ran a hand over his broken skin. He looks like he was pecked to death. Birds got him? Naruto had to ask in bewilderment. He's seen people die before. Hell, Neji was pretty fond of birds himself, but to see proof that birds had killed someone shocked even a ninja like himself. He figured he's seen everything by now. Jill nodded as she took note of a grenade launcher by Forrest's chair. She took it, bowing her head in respect as she stood back up. We can't just leave him. Chris finally spoke, but it sounded ominous and monotone. We can't drag his body with us. Jill countered. Chris frowned, but didn't argue back. Naruto looked to his friend. We'll come back here once we find a way out. We'll take him and give him a proper burial. He promised. Jill nodded as she rejoined them. He's right. You just need to wait a little bit, she told the saddened and angered man. The three of them turned, Chris giving Forrest a long gaze, before they began walking. As they walked away, a low moan filled the air. With the silence of the night, they heard it louder than it actually was. It sent chills down their spines and made their blood freeze. Chris shakily turned back, not sure if he was prepared for the obvious source to the moan. Forrest stood up from the chair and began walking towards them. "Forrest," he whispered, sad to see his friend reanimated like this. It was a far worse than death, and Forrest wasn't peaceful by any means based on his wounds. He had textbook shitty luck at the end and even beyond. Jill and Naruto both turned back as well to see Forrest finish standing up. Joe gasped. No, Naruto felt the pain as well, remembering seeing friends of his like Itachi and Nagato brought back from the dead as well against their will. A reanimated dead friend was probably one of the worst things to face. He hated that Chris and Jill were going through it more than he had back in his world during the war. He wanted to help them, and he think he knew how. His hand itched towards his gun. Chris swallowed, knowing what needed to be done as well. Jill saw him raise his weapon. "Chris," she mumbled. "He didn't look. He's your friend more than mine." "He's your rival." Naruto froze. His rival? Chris had himself a rival as well. It made him think of Sasuke, which made him halt what he was about to do to spare Chris and Jill the pain. "You don't have to do it." "I'll." "Blam." Chris shot Forrest's head, jerking his body back as he fell dead for the second time. Jill clutched her new grenade launcher tightly in surprise as Naruto was brought back to reality. "What?" he asked as Chris lowered his gun, his head following suit. He looked like he was chained to an anchor and trying to hold himself up over a cliff. His words were ignored when Chris walked over to Forrest's corpse. "You should have let me," Jill said, knowing how hard that was for Chris to do, or me. Naruto added. "I didn't know him. I could have easily do it. You shouldn't have to kill your friend." Chris kneeled down to Forrest's body. "It's because he's my friend that I should be the one to have done it," he argued. He stunned Naruto and Jill long enough for him to shut Forrest's eyes, take his SDRS knife, and stand back up. He was my friend and I had the most obligation to put him down." He paused, lowering his head to stare at the gray eyelids of his fallen comrade. This is what he would have wanted. If he had to go, he would have wanted it to be like it was at our target practice sessions, me being the one to pull the trigger first. Jill was stunned at Chris' logic. She wasn't sure whether to call it admirable or plain stupid. Chris knew Forrest better than she did. Maybe he was right? But it didn't make it any easier to see Chris hurting because of doing the dirty deed. Naruto had words to say, however. "I get it," he started. Chris didn't turn back to stare at him. "He's your friend, you have the right to mercy kill him. In a messed up way, you're right." He clutched his fist. "But don't give some bullshit about how it's your obligation to kill your friends," he snapped. Jill was shocked at his tone while Chris' shoulders stiffened, the only sign that he was paying attention. Naruto softened his tone. "Taking all the burden on yourself isn't right. Watching them die is bad enough, but putting them down yourself and feeling it's your obligation, like you have no choice in the matter, isn't fair to you. A friend of mine once told me to never take the pain on my own, that it'll just morph me into a terrible person." Itachi's words after he released himself from the reanimation was playing through his mind, hoping Chris could see the light like he did. Jill was silently watching in awe. Naruto's words were spoken with clarity and with experience. Wherever he was from, he had to have seen or go through some kind of great trauma to have to be told that. She wanted to know more than what he told her to keep himself awake and alive longer for Chris and Rebecca to get the antidote. He was an interesting and mysterious kid. Chris didn't move. He was right. If you keep pushing yourself to do these hard things, you'll only push yourself down a hole you'll have no chance of climbing back out of. He paused. "Would your sister want you to turn into a monster?" Chris stiffened again. "I don't know her, but I think any sibling would hate for their older brother to willingly turn himself into a heartless person. Let us help you. Don't force yourself to kill your friends if it comes down to it." Jill nodded. "He's right, Chris. We're in this together and I'm not about to watch as you destroy yourself to do something that we can do together. Claire wouldn't want her brother to destroy himself and I'm not letting my friend go either." Naruto grinned. Damn right. They couldn't see it, but Chris was letting tears fall from his face. He was touched by Naruto's speech, seeing the truth in them. He couldn't become the executioner. Seeing his friends die was enough for him. He didn't want to have to sleep with their undead blood on his hands as well. He just wanted to be the tough guy. The guy who could do all the hard things that had to be done, but even tough guys needed help. No one can stay strong forever, and he didn't want to lose himself and hurt Claire. They already lost their parents so young. He didn't want her to have a brother that lost himself and went off the deep end. He didn't know what losing him would do to her, dreading even thinking about the possibilities. "Thank you," he whispered, although it came out a little shaky. He hoped Jill and Naruto missed it. He at least didn't want to be seen or heard crying by them. He at least wanted that tough guy quality to stick. Unfortunately for him, Jill and Naruto caught it and smiled to one another. Chris blinked whatever tears he had left away. Turning around, he strolled back over to Naruto and Jill. Holding Forrest's STRS knife in his hand, he flipped it around so he was holding the bladed part. He looked to Naruto as he held the knife to him. Smiling, Naruto grabbed the handle and took the knife away from Chris. The Alpha member nodded as he brushed past him and headed to the door back inside the mansion, Naruto behind him. Jill smiled as she too followed. They were back where they found the key. The dimly lit basement corridor torture chamber-like rooms sent chills down Naruto's spine. The sound of what could be made out as gears turning or chains being pulled echoed in the disturbance of the room. He, Chris, and Jill were standing in front of 4 mask outlines to the right of the entrance. Chris was holding 2 masks while he and Jill each had 1, weapons holstered or set down for the time being, so Jill was barely heard over the chains being pulled. "Do we just put the masks in their spots?" Chris nodded. "That's what the book said kinda." Naruto looked to his, the one without everything. He strangely felt off when he looked at it, shuddering as he stared at the non-existent pupils of the mask. "What do you guys think this will do?" Jill wondered as she looked at hers. The one with no eyes. "Will we get another key? Will a secret passage open? Or will we open a trap door that'll drag us all to hell?" Chris retorted as he looked at the masks that had no nose or mouth. "I think we're already there, Chris," Jill commented. Chris shrugged. "We still gotta put these masks in, no matter what may happen, so let's do it." Naruto was quick to put his mask in place. Once he did, the sound of something snapping boomed within the small confinement they were in. Chris and Jill almost jumped at the sudden increase in volume. Nodding to the other, they each set their masks in place, hearing the sound of the chains snapping 3 more times. After that 3rd time, however, a sound that was all too familiar with the noise you would hear when something fell from a great height entered the room. The trio each turned around, weapons ready when they saw a coffin on the ground that definitely wasn't there before. "Where the hell?" Jill asked. Chris looked directly up where the coffin laid, seeing what was left of the chain work. There, he pointed. Naruto wasn't too keen on seeing what was inside. He had enough twists and turns from the moment he stepped into this hell. He could do without another one. Well, Lady Luck wasn't on his side as something crawled out of the coffin. It was another one of those crazy-looking zombies from before. This psycho zombie had blood drooling at the mouth, a destroyed suit that barely clung to its body, chunks of skin destroyed, and claws that it used to wipe its mouth. It crouched into a hunching pose and slowly stalked over to the trio. Chris summed up their thoughts perfectly. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow SuperNeos too for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.